Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Gears of War 5 Insane Difficulty video walkthrough. I'm always going to call this game Gears of War 5, guys, in these walkthroughs because I've done it so much on my walkthroughs for this series. But of course, this is Gears 5, and this is Act 2 on Insane. We're going to be traversing a village here that you can walk around and do some expositional stuff, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to do some crossfades of me picking up components that I found along the way, and then we're going to get directly into the fighting. The previous video was pretty minimal on the transitions and the crossfades between large areas because there wasn't that much non-traditional Gears gameplay. On this act, it is all not conventionally Gears gameplay and lots of crossfades and lots of teleports because there's not that much action in Act 2, and the action that does exist is pretty sweet. Like, I love this initial fight. This chapter is my favourite chapter in Act 2. We start off in Oscar's village. We take on the Hunters for the first time in the game, Hunters are essentially the equivalent of the Theron Guards. They are the kind of upgraded, kind of special forces of the Swarm. And in this game, they look a bit like Scourge. They have the dreadlocks, and they look a bit like the Predator, and they have a cloaking device just like the Predator, which is kind of interesting. They wield Boltocs and Torque Bows, and if they hit you with the Boltoc, it's a one-hit kill. So this particular section is actually pretty hard. You want to be really careful, and the only reason I'm being aggressive is because I've done it a few times, and I know that if you don't move, you can be here a long time. But you actually want to hear the winding of the Torque Bow, because it means he's not using the Boltoc. If he's using the Torque, you're going to be okay. And then flinch them with the Boltoc and headshot them, and keep moving forward. Jack has been downed and someone's going over there to help him out. Jack is actually the best companion in the game. He's the person who I've had the least problems with bugs-wise, except for that one where he doesn't listen to your commands. As far as being resourceful and his survivability, Jack does a really good job. He kind of gets stuck in, he defends when he needs to. The amount of times he's saved me is really high. Like, he's very welcome. And I hope that we can get to the issue of the command not working, whatever that issue is. Because there's some weird stuff on this game where the PC controls don't work and then the controller controls do work, and like, even when you map them, sometimes they don't. Like, do you want to know one of the weirder things that I noticed immediately with this game? If you change your controls to a different button, the tooltips tell you the wrong button to press to do things. So tutorials pop up on the screen to tell you how to do something, but they don't update to how you've changed the control scheme. So the tooltips are wrong. And it just... 2019? Like, this is their second Gears game? How do you fuck this up? I don't understand that, personally. But did you hear that? That tells you someone's close. Somebody growled just then. Oh, is this the bug? I think it is. Right, so, right now, guys, there's an Imago that's fused with the building because he didn't spawn correctly, and I can hear him, you can hear him, but I can't find him. And I'm being all tentative because I don't have many guns and I don't want to die because there's no checkpoint yet. He's there to my left in the pipe, did you see him? He's on that balcony in the pipe. And I get really confused, because this door opens and a Scion comes out, but he's on that balcony there, where that pipe is. And I'm looking and I can't see it. I'm like, where the fuck is this guy? So I'm using myself as bait with Stim to try and figure out what's gone off, but this is a problem. This is a literal bug that the game does sometimes. And I do figure out where he is, but it takes him a little while. And I didn't want to trim this out, guys, because this might happen to you. But do you hear him? He has to be over there. I can hear him. He's here somewhere. And there he was again. See him? Do you see him? He's just behind the pipe. You can kind of see him, but he's in the wall. I'm going to see his leg in a moment. You see his leg? He's there. I've got him. I can see him. There he is. How fucked up is that? That's so dumb. This game costs $60. And this dude's not even fighting back. And he's in the wall. And I need to be careful because this guy is fighting back. And he's big as shit. Look at him. I'm at point blank range of a Scion with Juvies, and I don't want to be here, but I'm here because the game fucked up. So just be careful, guys. Be very careful. If there's a wall behind you when a boomer shoots, you'll know about it because he'll kill you instantly. And that's quintessential boomer. He's always done that. But blind him, shoot him in the face, and then when you push forward now, you'll get your first checkpoint, and you don't ever have to start with that Boltoc anymore, which is really good news. But you might have thought in the previous video, guys, that I was exaggerating, because I am somebody who's prone to using hyperbole a lot. I do make rather ridiculous claims, and I am rather dramatic, because it's all part of the theatre of my channel. But the problems I've had with this game, guys, are 1000% a serious issue, and I'm not the only one. I've never read so many forums with so many problems at launch in a game. It's kind of crazy. And you'd think, wouldn't you? Because Gears of War 4 seemed like a pretty decent game on its presentation. I feel like Gears of War 4 had a good level of polish, and I didn't have many problems with it. Maybe I got really lucky, but I don't remember. I beat that campaign 6 or 7 times, and I never remember having issues where the scripting went wrong or the enemies didn't spawn. You know, maybe I'm just getting DSP luck. But right here there is a tutorial of this new ability, which is called the Shock Trap. The Shock Trap seems really good, but I didn't really use it. So you're not going to see too many Shock Trap strategies, but don't sleep on it, guys. If you want to experiment, it's probably very, very good. And then here we have the next encounter. So we have Juvies, we have drones, and there might be a hunter knocking around somewhere. Be very careful with the Juvies. They'll two-hit you in a second. And here we go. Here's the classic, guys. If you don't like the gun that you've got and your teammates have a gun that you'd like, feel free to swap your guns with them if you can. It has to be said though, I feel like the gun swapping is not as good as it was in Gears 3. This might be my nostalgia coming out, and I might have completely made this up, but I feel like in Gears you could swap guns for the gun they were holding, or the gun that was on their back, and you can't do that in this game to my knowledge. The amount of times where I want to take a gun off somebody, like a Gnasher, to give them a power weapon, and I take their Lancer when they need their Lancer, is way too high. And it'd be really nice if when you mark a gun, if your teammate would go and pick it up and use it. Like, I think that would be a really, really nice command to have. And maybe there is a command like that and I've not read it or found it. A lot of my issues with this game, guys, when it comes to certain features, could be ignorance that I've not found that can be cured. And I'm going to be playing so much Horde mode that hopefully I'm going to figure them out. In this cache here, there is a Markser, and there is a cardinal sin of Gears. They've put a gun in front of the grenades. And I don't understand why they do that, because don't they realise it's really fucking hard to pick up grenades when there's a gun in front of it that you don't have? It's like, that's Gears 101, guys. You don't even give us a toggle option between the two. Come on now. Have they made a game before? What's that? They've made a Gears game before? And then we have another stump coming up here, guys. He's stuck to the underside of the roof. And this is the most interesting the stump is ever going to be. The idea that these things can be like stuck on the geometry and surprise you is really cool if their function is a turret and if their HP was 1/50th of what it is. Because once again we've come across this issue of, you know, function versus design. This enemy looks awesome on the trailers and on the artwork. It's like a crazy tripod that's all manifested into all nastiness and mechanics put together. It's got components on it and roots on it and leech skin on it and all kinds of crazy stuff. Creatively, it looks great. It looks like it's going to be a super fun enemy. But then mechanically, it's fucking dull. It's like a Dark Side full commentary. You just sit there hoping it ends or hoping you die. Either way is preferable, right? And I don't get it. So, for the people in the comments, guys, if you know something about the stump that makes it more interesting, please share it, because I'm very curious. If anybody's like, oh, I really like him, he's got this and this and this, because that would be nice to see a different side of him than the side of him where I shoot his leg from a pixel peak, like I'm playing Rainbow Six Siege. But that machine that's in front of that drone, you can activate it with Jack and it will release steam, but I've never killed a locust with it, so I don't really mess with it too much. There's a decent amount of environmental stuff you can fuck with, but a lot of the times the locusts are either so tanky or clever enough to stay away. But you'll notice he's actually moved. So he can move, he just chooses not to and just spams. Because if this thing came close, can you imagine how scary that would be? Remember the Maulers or the Blood Mounts? When a Blood Mount was at a distance, you're like, I'm going to fuck this guy up, this is going to go easy. As soon as he gets close, it's like, oh my god, mistakes were made, please leave, please leave, please leave, and you ran like a coward, right? You can't not do that. That's simply what Blood Mounts brought out of players, because they were dangerous. Whereas this thing... his animations are so interesting too, but he's trash. He's such a bad enemy. Oh. And you might wonder, why does it bother me so much? It bothers me so much because this game has 3 new enemies. Well, 4 new enemies, technically, I think. How many new enemies does this game have? It has the flock, it has the stumps, it has the rejects, and it has the wardens. And the rejects are good, even though I thought they were shit at first, and then I kind of learned to figure them out, and they worked a bit better. And the warden, I liked from the beginning. I think the warden's really cool. But the warden's just a speedier butcher, intrinsically, so as much as I like him, he's kind of something we already had a long time ago. But his weapon is super overpowered in multiplayer as well, so don't use that. Don't be one of those people. But yeah, got a couple of hunters over here. I'm going to blind them with Jack and spam them down with some Lancer shots. I'm going to stay as safe as I can because the checkpoints are quite beefy here. You have to do a decent amount in between them. But I like this part of the game because it's action. We're in the thick of it. There's no time to talk about, you know, haircuts and fucking food and stuff and how cold it is. Instead, it's just like, we need to survive. This is Gears of War. This is decaying beauty. Let's fucking do this. And I really appreciate that. I'm swearing a lot and I don't know why. I apologize if people don't like cursing. Ooh, beautiful. God, it's a satisfying sound. And there is the awesome toll of the bell telling us that we're in the clear and we can go exploring now and hopefully find some better guns. But the wardens, I don't know if we're gonna see one in this level, but we're not going to kill it. We're gonna fight them later on. You've already seen the warden. He was in all the promotional material. He's the guy with the double maces that like makes them clink together. He's a pretty interesting guy. He's so dangerous, but at the same time, he's got really good telegraphs. If there's one way I could change him, I'd make his hitbox a little bit smaller, because there's times when he swings at you and he doesn't touch you and you still just explode. And I get why, because he's at a big disadvantage the whole time, because he walks towards you until he starts running, and when he starts running, that's when you want to start praying, because he just gets... If he jumps, some of his jumps, man, are something else. It's like being hit by a planet. It's crazy, crazy effective. But he's fair, too. He's still fair, even though his jumping is a little bit obnoxious. And it'd be really cool if the roll was better, because whenever an enemy swings at you like that, if you could roll through it and get iframes and use skillful timing, it'd be amazing. But Gears was never meant to be an action game like that, not to be like a character action. It's meant to be a shooter. And in shooting games, invincibility is something that they don't really want to give you too much because it's really easy to exploit. And that's one of the reasons why Vanquish is amazing, because it takes the precision and the reactionary skill of a character action game and it puts it into a third-person shooter. So when you watch somebody play Vanquish, they don't play it like I'm playing Gears, because you can't, really. Once you get to a certain level in Vanquish, you realise that moving and being aggressive is so much better than staying back defensively, because you have the tools to survive if you know what you're doing. And the difference between a good and bad player in Vanquish is exactly that. You can spot somebody who's not comfortable with Vanquish because of the way they move. And in Gears, it's not as easy to see that. Like, movement is important in Gears, and you can tell someone who's better when it comes to movement because the movement has a lot of skill to it. There's a big skill ceiling to adjust to. And when you watch the gameplay of someone who's not familiar with Gears, they don't roadie run, or they don't bounce into cover, they don't roadie run in cover, they don't transition from cover to cover, and they just don't move the same as someone who knows the system. And I by no means am a great example of it because I've not really played Gears in a while and my movement's trash at the moment, but there are just certain things that you'll notice a player doing that tells you that they have a grasp of the mechanics, and it'd be really nice if it helped a little bit more in this game. And that's why I like Stim so much. Stim is essentially iframes. Stim is effectively your ability to dodge through attacks, but instead of dodging, you rely on Jack to work, which is the hard part, and you press that button and you get that buff and it will tank a boss's projectile. There's a boss in this game, guys, that throws a quill at you. When you use that ability, you'll eat it and you'll not die. On insane. Can you believe that? Is that not fucking awesome? God, I love that. But I wish you had more control about it, because when you press up and it doesn't work and then you die. It's really frustrating. And Jack's just like sitting there texting or something. Bastard. But through here is a wonderful Gears 3 flashback. And I say flashback when I mean throwback, but you know what I mean. We get to use a silverback. And we get to remember just how awkward to use the silverback is because the FOV is terrible. So all you can see is your own fat body, and you can barely see what you're supposed to be shooting at. And then you start shooting and the muzzle flash is so strong you can't even see where you're shooting. Like, look at this. All I'm doing is hoping it goes red. It's really funny. But it's cool though, I do like these robots. And it brings me to an interesting point in Gears 5. Can you remember the best part of Gears 4? If you can't, I'll remind you. You got into a huge fucking robot with a staple gun, and you were going into cover as a huge robot fighting things and killing things really well, and it was awesome. You spent the whole game building towards a crescendo, and the crescendo was a huge robot, and I liked it a lot. You even fought the final boss in it. Spoiler alert, that is not in this game. So the best part of Gears 4 isn't in Gears 5. And it's in the game. Cole rides one of them. Cole does quite a lot in one of them. But you never get in it. You never get in that huge robot that was one of the best parts of Gears 4. Like, you spend the whole game wanting to be in that robot, and then you get in that robot and it's awesome. And then this game completely casts aside the fact that that robot was ever fun, and instead opts to give you pseudo sandbox with nothing to do. And I can't understand that. Like, if those sandbox sections were in that huge robot, I think I'd like them more. But then they'd have to put enemies in for you to fight, but I just don't really know how that would work. But suffice it to say, that huge robot was awesome. And this is as close as you're going to get to it in this. And I just don't get it personally. I feel like they should have given it to us at the beginning of the game to be like, remember how you had to wait the full game for this last time? Not this time. Like, can you imagine if you were on a transport convoy of wagons that were carrying it, and you were taking it somewhere to get repaired, and then after carrying it on like a convoy level, on a super cool Gears 2 Derek-esque level, you then got it repaired by, you know, some character that repairs shit, and boom, then you got to play as it for a bit, and then it went on a bit of a hiatus again, and then you got to play as it a little bit, and then it came back for the finale. That would be sick. Also, this was interesting. I restarted Checkpoint here to see if it would heal my silverback, and it took it off me. And I don't know why, because I'm certain the first time I did this, it didn't do that. So I'm going to show you how to do this on foot, but you shouldn't have to, because you should have the silverback. If you throw 2 grenades at the spawn here, and then you start using your rockets, you can bombard these steps and kill literally everybody that's about to turn up. Another strategy is if you use your torque bow, you can shoot them on the roof as they climb over the opening gate. But it's really hard to kill lots of them, so you can only usually get 2 or 3 shots, and then the rest of them will rush you, and if you're not careful, they'll kill you instantly, because some of the enemies do so much damage from up close. But now that you've done that, go to the gate, and then once you're at the gate, it's going to introduce us to the next chapter, which is where we get to use the skiff, and Chris gets to really share his opinions on Gears 5. So, I don't like the skiff, guys. You knew this was coming. If you've seen my videos before, if you're familiar with my work. I love the idea of the skiff, and I think it controls really well, but all it is a glorified hold forward the game. That's all it is, guys. There's nothing to do in the skiff at all. There's no like crazy crash courses or races or any of the usual shit that gets shoved into open world games. There's no combat sections, there's no sections where the locusts turn up in Mad Max 2 inspired vehicles and you start having an awesome Road Warrior homage. Nothing. All you do is drive while characters talk to each other. It is literally God of War. We're in the boat, it's time for story time. That's what it is. If you're okay with that, then you'll look at it as a much needed opportunity for character development. Because both Kate and Del are going to talk, and they're going to talk in the most generic way possible. If there was an award for saying the most while actually saying nothing, they would win it. Because people who think the navigational stuff in this is building character have never read a book. I just can't believe that they have. Because as much as it's nice to hear them talk about current events, it's not character building if no one has a character arc. The whole point of character building is that characters learn. Characters go through struggles, they go through pathos, they come out the other side, and something is inherited or understood that is different to when they started. In this game, the arc for Kat is confusion and like pain and not knowing where she belongs and being haunted by these headaches and these visions. And then at the end of the game, there is an arc to a different state. How she gets to that arc, that is where the quality of the storytelling resides. Same with Dell. Dell in this game, his arc is he is kind of disenfranchised from JD. He obviously wants to put the D in her, and he is backing her and trying to be there for her, trying to be a good friend. And at the end of the game, he has his arc, and you can talk of the merits of what you think they were when they got there. Talking on a skiff about shit you already know, because it's shit that's already happened, is not character development. It's just rambling. It's what I'm doing on these videos because I have to commentate for 2 hours on myself. Fundamentally, outside of a few strategies, I'm just rambling. And some people like that, some people value that. There was a game recently called Red Dead Redemption 2. I've stopped off here, by the way, guys. This is the only divergence I'm going to do from the main path. There's a unique weapon here, and it's a long shot. It's called a relic long shot. There are plenty of these weapons in the game which are better versions of the weapons, and what it does is when you get an active, you get an extra shot in the chamber, so you get 2 shots. And I'm picking this up because the long shot's one of my favourite guns. I'm doing this so that I can speak about it, to tell you that if you explore, you will be able to find more of those weapons. But as you can see from the transitions here, guys, the moment I get in the skiff, I'm transitioning to the moment I get out of the skiff, and I'm skipping all of the driving, because all I'm doing is driving. That's it. And for some people, that will be really fun because it's a nice interim between combat and exploring. People will enjoy it. Like, I think my friend Aiden's going to love these parts because this is the kind of stuff he loves. I think he's going to have a really good time with it. For me, it's fucking boring. I don't want to do it. There's nothing to it. It's mechanically uninteresting and it never evolves, so I don't want to do it. If anything, it gets worse when sandstorms turn up later on with the wind flares, but we'll talk about that when they do. But as I was saying, guys, there's a game called Red Dead Redemption 2, and in that game you can spend hundreds of hours with a character called Arthur. And after you've spent all that time with that character doing tedious things and looking after his horse and learning about his story and things, people get this inflated idea of development of his character because they've spent so much time with him, and it gives them a personality bias. However, if you just do the main missions in in Red Dead Redemption 2, Arthur's character isn't all that clear or all that interesting. He has a couple of moments of progression and pathos, but fundamentally, he's the guy who needlessly listens to Dutch the whole game, even though his instinct tells him that every time he listens to Dutch, they get in trouble. And then, of course, later on, things change a little bit. That circumstance changes, and then it progresses more. But I did not think that the character development of that character in Red Dead was half as good as the people who spent a long time with him doing tedious things. Because what happens, guys, is the longer you spend with something, the easier it is to understand it. The easier it is to put yourself with it, and the more empathy that you develop for that situation. And that's what this game's trying to do, I think. It's trying to humanize the characters in a way that, from just a tertiary glance, comes off as a little bit stagnant and needless. But to some folk who are going to do all the side missions and are going to drive around finding all the collectibles, to those people, I think they're going to probably feel like Dell and Kate have a much better character arc than I do, because I didn't do those things. And I think it's important to say that, because when I critique the story later on, and when I talk about some of the game's shortcomings from my perspective, it comes from that perspective of, I didn't spend an eternity with these characters. To me, these characters are strangers. I've spent an eternity with the old characters, and to me, those characters are family. And it's just because of time invested. It's the Red Dead Redemption 2 slow burn approach to making you really empathise with your character. But moving forward here, guys, you'll notice that I've been putting heavy weapons on the skiff and then I've been bringing them with me. I'm now carrying the Lancer GL with the long shot. These are two weapons that are going to come really handy here. The torque bow is also really important. You can use that if you'd prefer. A couple things to bear in mind. Some of the fights coming up are affected by wind, so if the projectile that you're shooting is projectile, like a boom shot, like a drop shot, things like that, then you're going to have much more of a difficult time landing those shots than you would if you use a torque bow or a long shot. And that's the reason why I'm going to prioritise it, as my game stutters just then. And we're now going to be moving through this rather beautiful looking scene, which is this snowy forest that's been... I mean, it's a beautiful location, and I love the aesthetic. I just wish you did more fighting, because there's a lot of moments like this where you're just kind of running around and it's weather. And it's very reminiscent of old Gears in some ways. The Razorhail had a sequence like that, even though it was much shorter and there was a lot more fighting. The last game had those wind flares, even though they were much shorter and there was a lot more fighting. You know, you're kind of getting the idea. If you're a player who thought that Gears 4 had too much fighting and thought it got repetitive, you're going to like this game. And this enemy I'm fighting right now is another stump, and I'm using the tri-shot because it's going to absolutely destroy it. This gun is so strong. And I'm using Stim now so I can shoot out of cover without fear of reprisal, so I can take him out. But the reason I don't like this level, guys, is just because there's more time doing this that I'm doing right now than there is doing what I just did. And for me, Gears is all about the combat. It's all about that encounter-to-encounter basis, and then the story flooding through that and having a couple moments to highlight certain aspects. Whereas in this, there's a lot more exploration, there's a lot more downtime, and there's a lot more of the patented Gears Act 3 spooky moments, which... I think I'm going to talk about that because we're about to hit one. So I'm assuming you've played Gears before if you're watching this. I'm trying to get him to pick it up if you're wondering, guys, but he won't. I have to drop the gun and give it him, and sometimes I don't have the fucking patience to do it. So I'm just like, well, they should have designed the game better, shouldn't they? It's not my fucking fault. But I pick it up, I give it to him, and then he steals my fucking gun, doesn't he? Which, luckily, this time I got it back, but sometimes that happens. You have to be really careful. They're super eager to steal your fucking guns, but he won't pick the boom shot up. That's a big no comment from me. But here we are into the place we've been before. This is the New Hope Research Facility. You came here in Gears of War 2. One thing you're going to notice when you play Gears 5 is that it's banking a lot of nostalgia. It's banking a lot of nostalgia and a lot of old fiction, and it's rewriting old fiction to serve the new fiction. From a narrative perspective, it's probably the laziest writing convention that exists. And I say this because the best writing of this type of thing usually has foreshadowing, but you can't foreshadow a sequel you never ever imagined you'd make. So instead of subtle touches hinting towards certain factors, which the original Gears trilogy did a lot with certain things, this game just wholeheartedly jumps into moments we recognise and redesigns them to suit its narrative, and you see this a lot. And if you can look past that and it doesn't bother you, you'll be fine. But I can't, because I know the narrative of these games quite a lot. I've forgotten a lot of it because it's been a long time since I've played the campaigns, but there are a lot of information about Gears that I've managed to retain, and it's one of the areas where the story in this game really fell short to me because they were telling me things I already knew, and they were treating it like it was new information, and it wasn't. It was things that we'd already been inferred and been suggested that I'd almost already gathered myself. Don't shoot him early, guys. He has to move before he takes damage. This is a Warden fight coming up. I'm going to talk about this. So the Warden nice shot, Del. The Warden walks really slowly towards you, and if you shoot him in the face, you'll knock his helmet off. Once his helmet's off, you'll do incredible damage to his face, and because I'm using a tri-shot, I'm going to do insane damage to him. He can block with his weapons, and he can also charge you, but if you flash him with Jack, he'll be stunned for a decent amount of time and it'll let you kill him. If you fight him the way I fought him then, he will never be a problem. And a piece of advice, give his weapon to Del. I don't know if Del can use the Breaker Mace infinitely, but it seems like he does. And when you use it, it has durability. But when I've given it to him in certain sections, he seems to kill things more eagerly than he does normally, and if anything comes close to him, he'll hit them with that and they'll die. So I really like him with that weapon. It's done me really well, so I recommend you do the same. But narratively, when you don't foreshadow things and then you tell us what really happened, what ends up happening is, for instance, can you remember how... This is going to be a big spoiler, by the way, for a movie called The Avengers Trilogy. I apologise if I'm ruining your life and you've not seen these things, but that's what I do, baby. Sorry about that. So in Avengers Endgame, there is a moment in the middle of the movie where the team has to go back in time. It's not really much of a spoiler, but I suppose it still is. They go back in time to the first movie, where they are doing things, where their characters are also doing things, so they're avoiding their previous selves as their future selves to do something that will help them in the future. And it would be beautiful if, in the first Avengers, if you paused on certain shots, you could see the team in the past from the future. If that first movie has this, and it might have this, I've never checked it, but if the first Avengers movie has this little Easter egg of what was coming later on, then that movie goes up in my esteem by 1,000,000. Because it means that somebody who was writing it had a good idea of how it was going to end when they started, and it's not just manufactured garbage from the studio, from this like print-off sheet of, here's what we need to make millions of dollars, keep queefing the shit out because people eat it up. And if that exists, then that is a beautiful example of elegant, forward-thinking foreshadowing. And it doesn't get much better than that from a story design, because it means that you have structured your story in such a way that eagle-eyed viewers and people who are passionate about understanding all the subtleties can figure out what's coming. And that's what Gears 5 and this revisionistic version of storytelling robs of an audience. It robs you of the position of being able to go, oh my god, I think I know where this is going. Because the one hook that this game has is the idea of whether or not Kate is going to betray the Cog and join the Locust, or stay loyal. That's the only hook this game has. It's the only new thing that I'm even remotely interested in, because it's the only good piece of storytelling in the fucking game. And spoiler alert, it's completely ignored! And barely prefaced, ever. It shows up in a bunch of gameplay-affecting garbage, red screen, nonsensical, ruining a boss fight moments, and that's it. There's no choice, there's no trepidation, there's no emotional tug-of-war, there's no difficulty, there's no pathos, there's no strife, there's just bleh. And then instead of that really cool gameplay and story element hook that actually works on both fronts, instead of that, they go in on Mira, a character we already know about and almost everybody has already figured out. But instead, they tell us on the nose things we already knew. And the worst part is, they make it sound like it's new information when they're telling us things we've known for years. We've known this shit for 8 years. Niles is a bad guy. We've known that for ages. Niles created the sires, the progenitors to the Locust. We've known that for years. Did you know that Niles actually experimented on Mira? Well, we didn't quite know that, but we might have been able to figure it out, because there was almost no definitive answer given for Mira, so we had to make up our own, and most of people's answers were probably that. And this game's like, well, guess what? This is how it is. And everyone's just thinking, I know. That's what everybody thought it was. Where's the fucking news here? So a story that has one hook the whole way through abandons the hook in the pursuit of something we already knew, regurgitating information already agreed upon in a new format that the only people who are remotely surprised by it are the characters that we're playing as, because they've only been in 2 fucking games. And it's not good, because you don't care, and that's the problem. When you play a game that forces you into a storyline that you see holes in, it's harder to lose yourself in the story, and you lose the stakes of the story, and you lose the ability to care. Oh, by the way, guys, this segment I'm doing right now, if you have a chainsaw, this segment's really easy, because the people that are in the way that you can't get behind without doing silly things to do so, you can just chainsaw them. But instead, I'm going to end up shooting them with the tri-shot. So bring a chainsaw here and save yourself some hassle. But I thought the most fascinating angle of the story was this internal conflict that Kate was going to have. And I was really hoping it was going to take central stage. And it didn't. And it makes me sad that. It also comes off as sequel bait as well, because instead of giving us a definitive ending and instead of like weighing down on what it meant as a choice, it goes more so into this idea of establishing a new queen and then just establishing a new trilogy to milk. And I think that that's unfortunate in many ways, because I was really hoping that the character that is the queen would have been left in the past. I don't think we needed that. And I don't know, guys, what did you guys think of that particular angle? Because I've seen a lot of people praising the story of this game, and I just don't understand why. Like, every single hook it has, I already knew. Wow, that reject got real close. Did he hurt me then when he mantled over the cover? I think he did. That is inherited from the Juvies. But right now, this is everybody's favourite Swarm. You can remember when I said that the Swarm isn't dangerous? Did you notice how it attacked me just then, and I slid into cover and it didn't hurt me? But there's a technique to kill this a little bit quicker if you don't have the ammo, guys. On the pipes on the walls, there are a couple of bits you can shoot that release that chemical that hurts you. Whenever the Swarm flies towards those areas, shoot those pipes and you'll do really good damage to him for free. I'm not going to do that because I wanted to show you what you do if you're just going to shoot it. That's the reason why I carried the tri-shot into this room, because the tri-shot's really strong. But keep on shooting the leeches. The boss then comes back and then you can proceed to shoot it. When it glows like this, it means it's going to attack, but as long as you're not poking out of cover, it doesn't even hit you. This is the problem that I was talking about in the previous video. This is a really cool enemy that is almost completely harmless. The only dangers right now, and did you see how Jack was electrocuting all the leeches? And there's one there, and it misses me because it went for someone else. This is a victim of an enemy that's far too balanced in a game that's usually quite unbalanced. But keep on shooting them because they do take an absolute pounding. I wonder if you can grenade tag the flock. But I can't help but feeling like the Krill were better. And these guys should be the Krill. They should be the Swarm equivalent of hibernated Krill instead. Because I've not read all of the collectibles yet. Hopefully that's going to help on some of the narrative moments and some of the pieces of fiction for the characters and the lore. Like, another thing that might be a thing that I've not seen, guys. I don't know if there's been any more Gears books, and some of the stuff that they've anchored in this story as being really important is something that was introduced in the books. Because Aiden said something to me the other day. He said, did you know that Anya was the first minister? And I was like, yeah, this game literally tells you that at the beginning. And apparently that was in the book. So if you'd not played this game, you would know that Anya was the first minister. It might have been in Gears 4 at some point as like a castaway sentence, but I don't remember it. But it was one of those things where it's interesting that the books are talking about that kind of stuff. Maybe there's more stuff in the books that makes this story a little bit more understandable from a perspective of why did they abandon literally the most interesting part of their narrative for regurgitating shit that was already known, other than nostalgia. And there's a lot of nostalgia in this game, guys. I've mentioned it a few times. There are lots of moments and winks back to the other games. One of them is super on the nose as well. Can you remember how at the end of Gears 1, where the Queen narrated after you beat Ram, and she talked about, you know, how they do not understand and all that stuff, and then when it pulled out, there was that Theron guard that had the cape that was on top of the Reaver? Well, this game does something similar to that. It pulls back, and there's a Locust there, and it's just one of those moments of like, why would you do that? And it doesn't even do it at the credits either. It does it midway through, I think, the final act, or the beginning of the final act, and it's like, what are they doing here? I don't get what they're doing. There's like a ton of moments where you're just like, what the fuck? And I suppose I should talk about the patented Act 3 spooky section, seeing as how we've been in it for a while, and I haven't even mentioned it because I went off on the story. And I've tried my best not to shout at the story, guys, but the story made me really mad. But in this sequence here, if you play Gears of War 1, there's a sequence in Gears of War 1 where you go underground, but you do it through this emulsion factory. And when you go there, there aren't many conventional encounters at first. There's a very spooky opening where there's a lot of intended jump scares and tense moments as you navigate. And this continues throughout that sequence. It pioneered this idea that the midway through in a Gears game, there's going to be a moment where it's not combat heavy, you're going to explore, it's going to have tense atmosphere, it's generally going to be dark, or something dark is going to have happened, and you have to figure out what it is. And then it'll be back to the action, and everything will be awesome again. And this has happened in every Gears of War except for Judgment, because Judgment was just like, here's 25 levels of 5 million locusts, have a good time. And I love Judgment for that, because it's goofy and stupid. But in Gears 1, it was the Emulsion Factory at the top with the Lambent Wretches. In Gears 2, it was this place we're in right now, when you're navigating the lasers, and you're moving the boxes, and you're talking to Niles, and you're dodging the turrets and the lasers, and you're learning about the Sires, and then the Sires turn up, and the Sires are the threats. In Gears 3, it was the abandoned villages that had all been killed by the Formers, and all the people had been turned into, like, Emulsion spookies. And in Gears 4, it was when they introduced the Swarm. It went all spooky, and all quiet, and all windy, and all nightimey, and it's like Nightfall, or whatever it was called, the first chapter of that. And then the Swarm turned up, and it was like, oh my god, this is the Locust, what the hell's going on? And there was dramatic irony there, because you, as a player who's played Gears of War before, you knew you were fighting Locust, but the characters didn't. The characters weren't there for the war, they were born after the war, so they don't have any knowledge of it except for in the history books, and it's a lot different when you're fighting it. So to them, it was a new threat, and it was a scary threat, and they didn't really get it, but to us, we're like, oh, we've been here all day, son, we know how to do this. This is Gears of War. This is what I live for. And that's usually how it works. In Gears 5, these moments permeate the game. Instead of having a designated moment for the downtime, and for the drama, and for the exposition, and then for the spookiness, the game has it in almost every act. And some of them are longer than others. And Act 2 and Act 3 are completely ruined by it, in my opinion. Because for me personally as a player, I want action. I play for action. And what happens is, when you have these narratively focused, atmospheric moments, the second time you do them, they're boring. Because you know you're not in danger, you know there's nothing to happen, that nothing's going to happen, you know you are literally walking through a haunted house, seeing a lot of things happen, but not really seeing anything happen from a gameplay perspective. You are literally in a walking simulator. And the one redeeming factor of Gears 5 is they do intersperse it with encounters, but all it ends up doing for a player like myself is it makes me miss the fighting. And there's times in games when they throw so many fights after fights after fights after fights that the games can be tedious. But when it's Gears of War, like, Gears is built on its close encounters. It's built on that transition into that open courtyard with a slightly bigger battle, where everything's kicking off, and there's a ton of different weapons you can use to give you that creativity and make that battlefield your own. And there are a couple of moments in this game where it is perfect. It's everything that made Gears good, and it's done in such a way that makes me wish it happened more often. Like, this fight right now is kind of an interim fight to remind you that this game's about shooting. Because it's not a challenging fight, it's a bunch of throwaway Margos. Down here there's a sniper and a couple of dudes shooting at you. And there's a sliding sequence that makes me wish this game actually had a slide, because there's a section later on where the characters slide under a door, and it looks awesome, and if you could do that, the movement would just be elevated to such an interesting extent. But you'll notice this is just kind of a glorified running section, but there are a couple of rejects that turn up and a couple of juvies. I think this is a really good combination of enemies. Doesn't happen too often. There's me checking the difficulty again, guys. I apologise that I have to pause like that. Normally I would remove all of that, but I'm leaving it in to remind you to do it as well, because there's nothing worse than playing a game that's quite challenging, that you're having a tough time with, and then the game turns the difficulty down, you don't realise, and you don't get your reward for playing it on the hardest difficulty. And ironically enough, I beat this game on Insane and I didn't even get the achievement, and fortunately I don't care about achievements that much anymore, so it's not a big deal, but I imagine for some people it will be, and I really hope that they can fix that. But there is that gunfight. Pick up the ammunition, restock your supplies, there's an overkill over there if you want it. If this was Horde mode and I was a scout, that overkill would be in my hands so quickly I would have probably dismembered them, because it's so strong on him. But in the campaign, the shotguns have always been criminally underpowered, and I'll never understand it. This is a game that doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's been a game that's never made a lot of sense. Like, why can't I roll over that wall? I have to go around. 2019, Rod. Get it fixed. But there are weapons in this game that kill in one shot to the face. Weapons that are not that difficult to use if you're familiar with Gears and you've used them in the past. There are other weapons that don't. And the way that they say whether or not you can and can't kill a thing in the face is really interesting to me. For instance, you can charge a Torque round and shoot it at a Scion, who's a very dangerous monster, and it will headshot him and kill him instantly. It's the best way to kill them. It's a wonderful mechanic. It's skillful, it's precise, it's rewarding. But if you shoot a Pouncer in the face, it doesn't do anything to him. It doesn't do fuck all, he doesn't die. If you shoot him in his weak point on his belly, he does die. But as far as headshots go, the Pouncers are just completely anti-headshots. So like a Dead Space enemy, don't shoot the heads or you'll just make them worse. This is an interesting fight coming up. A couple of snipers. There's a few ways you can do this, but I've got a nice little spawn kill that you can try. You'll also notice that considering this is meant to be old technology in a Gears universe, there's not many instances of turning levers, turning circular wheels to open things. And in Planet Sera, the only thing we know for certain is that the cobbler and the shoemaker, that person is rich, because everybody has a size 40 foot. They're millionaires. And the second thing we know is that absolutely everything on this planet is opened by spinning a huge wheel. Those are the two grounding pieces of fiction that have solidified our understanding of Sera. And the fact he has a 26-hour day, which I don't know if I even knew that, but it says it in this game, so there you go. But there's the first two snipers. Then if you spawn, hit that with a grenade, you'll kill the next bunch that turn up. You can headshot them. The problem here is the smoke is so thick it can be hard to see. So I just do it that way, and then everybody's dead. And there's not that many fights coming up in this particular part of the level. It's one of the reasons I don't like this level at all. I don't like anything post Chapter 1 in Act 2. Oh, here comes the drop shotter. So this is an interesting one as well. If you get an active with a long shot, it doesn't kill him. If you get a headshot with a torque bow, he's dead. If you get a headshot with the drop shot, I think it kills him. Like, it's interesting what does kill and what doesn't kill, depending on the parameter of skill needed to use it. And one of the things I haven't tested that I'm really eager to is the Breaker Mace. I wonder if the Breaker Mace does good damage to big things. Like, has anybody smacked a carrier in his chest when he opens it to release cankers? Because I feel like, if you don't get immediately grabbed afterwards and killed, which can happen, it might do good damage. It's either going to do great damage or no damage. It'd be really nice if there was a context animation of him stabbing the Breaker Mace into its chest and doing ridiculous nuclear damage, but I just don't see it happening. Like, I think when it does that move, you should be able to go up to it and stick a grenade in its chest and take off like 70%. That'd be really nice, because no one would do that, because no one thinks to go close to the carrier, because he kills you instantly. And there's an enemy in this game that they've brought back that's a classic enemy of the franchise, and they've ruined it, because it's now the worst thing in the game. But that enemy, when you were close to it, had the ability to swipe at you and kill you instantly. And it had a normal swipe, and then it had this quick reactionary swipe to, like, turn around fast. Those were the moves it had. You could dance around this creature if you knew what you were doing. In this game, they've given it a grab, and it's a really fast grab that you don't get out of the same way you do most grabs. Like, traditionally, for instance, the Reject's a good example. When the Reject goes to grab you, he does the most elaborate wind-up before his hand comes over and he gets you. And it makes it really fair. On the flip side of this, you have the carrier. The carrier just swipes with a left hook, gets you in his hand, and then you're dead. And he's really fast, and it's always been really fast. It's got a big vacuum. It's one of the worst parts of Gears 4, in my opinion, because I always hated how he could just grab you like that. In this game, that new enemy, that's not a new enemy, but it's an old enemy made worse, that now has a really fast grab. And to make it even worse, that enemy can be walking towards you at a decent rate, they walk rather quickly, and then it can just swipe you and grab you, and that's it, and you're dead. And if you're playing on normal, you can probably get out of it, or you can probably survive it, but if you're playing on insane, you're fucking dead. You're super dead. Your ancestors are dead, everybody around you's dead, like the whole world is dead at that point, because it's just game over. But move through the gap in the ice, and then you can proceed back up this mountain towards towards the part of the game I don't like, which is this part. So we're navigating to 2 control towers. They're these communication towers that we have to do this funny minigame in. And then once we've done that, it's going to correlate a section of the ice that we need to go to that's going to take us to a location we've already been to. But to do that, we have to go into a mine so that we can get some explosives to break the ice, and it's very convoluted. You'll notice that the first act on this game, in my editing, was about 1 hour and 20 minutes long, which is about, give or take, the length a Gears act usually is. They're usually about that size, excluding Gears 4 and Gears 3. Gears 3 was much longer. I think Gears 4 was closer to the structure that you're used to. Whereas this act is 2 hours and 15 minutes long, so it's nearly twice as long as the first act. And that's when I've edited all of the transportation out, so you can imagine how long this mission is compared to the other one, and it really throws the pacing off. But at the beginning of this fight, there's going to be a Scion that spawns. If you're good with the torque bow, which you should be at this point, there's been enough games to understand how it works, you can headshot him. And if you miss, like you're probably going to the first few times, if you restart the checkpoint, you can have another crack at it. And my recommendation is restart the checkpoint until you hit him in the head. And then once you've hit him in the head, just use this positional advantage to take out as many of the drones as you can. And be really careful, because they do so much damage. If they team shoot you at the same time, it's almost an instant kill. There's a really good reason I'm this far away. It's not because I like putting pixels on pixels at 200 yards, it's because it's safer. And the cover that is in front of us, I think it can be destroyed. Any blue crystal like this can take enough damage that it flits away and leaves you vulnerable, and you never want that to happen for obvious reasons. But one of the really cool parts of this game is you'll notice that our characters are wearing thermal Gears armor. They're wearing specific clothing to deal with the cold, and then later on they wear specific clothing to deal with a hotter climate, and I like that. I think it happened in Gears 3, or maybe the outfits were just different in Gears 3, but it's a nice touch of detail. It reminds me of, you know, like what happens in James Bond movies where he has like 9 outfits in the whole thing. But I'm moving forward now, being a little aggressive, because the last thing alive is a hunter. I made him stagger. Guy's head is made of concrete, can't kill him. But the Boltok is super useful. And there it was. And that's the end of them. And in this game, when the characters say that's the end of it, it usually is. There's a couple of games where they do that, you run forward and then you die and you get really mad. But Gears has always been really good at that. And of course, because the Scion dropped a boom shot, you can now try and get Del to pick it up or give it him. But I'm at the point now where, because of the wind, the boom shot's going to be really difficult to use. And I don't have the patience to fuck with Del. You spend the whole game at the mercy of stupid AI, so there's times when I just think, well, what's the point? Oh, am I going to go back on it? Oh no, what am I doing? I'm going to grab the torque rounds from the hunter, yeah. So whenever you see hunters, they will give you torque ammo. I can't begin to tell you guys how important it is to carry a torque through this level. It's really going to help. If you don't have one, you will still be able to succeed, but it will be harder. A couple of things to bear in mind with the torque though. The torque doesn't fire like it used to. I think it was the same in Gears 4, but I never really used it in Gears 4 because I never played that class in Horde that benefited for it. One thing I do with the torque bow is I release both buttons at once. It's a bad habit to get into because it doesn't work that way anymore. In Gears 1 it worked fine. In this, it's going to get you punished. You need to release the trigger before you release the aim. If you don't, you're going to go into blind fire and it's going to make the shot miss. And if you ever see me go to shoot at a guy, charge the torque bow, and then release it, and then I go into blind fire and shoot the round, it's because I've done it wrong. And it's because releasing both buttons at the same time is going to affect your accuracy. And I think it's intentional to stop people from being, you know, absolute nightmares with the torque bow. It's a piece of recovery that they've put in there to make it a bit more fair. And I think it's existed before, but I have Gears 1 programming for almost every gun, because I played Gears 1 a million times more than I played the other Gears. And I played a lot of Gears 2, and I played a lot of Gears 3, and I've played over 500 hours of Gears 4. But Gears 1 was the first game I got on my 360, and it's all I played for months. Like, the game is so special for me, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so critical of this one. Because you might be watching this and thinking, wow, this guy really doesn't like Gears, although he says he does. He's really harsh on Gears 5. To me, guys, I felt like Gears 4 was a really safe game, and I think it hurt the series. I don't think it's a bad Gears. I've learnt to enjoy it a lot more than I originally did, and when I first played it, I thought it was fun enough. But I feel like it didn't need to exist. Oh, by the way, guys, when you push up here, you're going to spawn 2 of the shotgunner guys, the grenadiers. You want to spawn them and then back off, because pushing these dudes is just going to get you one shot. They're so dangerous. And you'll hear when they turn up, because the characters will mention it, and all I'm trying to do now is coax them out. Because this is an enemy that has no problems with rushing. They love to come forward. But I think there's a drone over there, and I don't think he's part of the spawn. I think he's part of the other spawn. So I'm going to try and Boltok him. Della's picked the one piece of cover I'm using, which is so frustrating. And I don't know why the programming lets him do this, but it does it all the time. It's nowhere near as bad as that one segment in Gears 4, where I just, every time I covered that moment made me want to kill myself. But here we go. Listen to the audio. You hear it? There they are. They spawn over there. These guys, bad news. They survive a talk as well. Can you believe that? What kind of normal drone survives a talk? Elite Grenadiers, that's who. This thing is so tough. I hate how much life he has. And they both died, thankfully. Oh, did he not survive the talk? I don't think he did. I've seen them survive it, though. That's the reason why I've said it. I don't know how he survived it. I don't know if it was one of those rare instances of the damage not being correct, but I've seen them shrug off a talk round on Insane. I don't like that. I don't think anything should survive a talk round, personally. Except for big stuff. And even then, Gears of War 1, I think when you fire at a boomer, it kills it instantly. It's so good, dude. The talk is so powerful. All you do is you limit the ammo that the player can have. Limit the player's ammo, and then the talk is balanced. But Gears of War 1's talk, god damn. That thing was a thing of beauty. But here's more of the environmental stuff. This is another one of those sequences that when you first time you do it, it's quite interesting, but then when you do it afterwards, it's like, can I get to the shooting, please? As I was saying though, guys, the reason why I'm very critical of this one is because I was hoping this one was going to take big risks, do its own thing, establish itself as its own Gears, and really push the genre forward and push the franchise forward. And I have to give them mad props. I have to give them a lot of commendations because they've taken risks with this game in some ways. There are some very unorthodox Gears decisions here, and I have nothing but respect for it, even though I don't like it. And this is a great section here. So you have to send Jack into a vent in the wall, and then you have to solve this puzzle. And the puzzle is moving 3 bars in a line. And when they were making this, I can't help but feel like the developers must have been massive fans of mining in Mass Effect 2, and they just thought, something this tedious has to go in our new game, because I think people are going to love it. And it screams of, we saw the hacking in Batman, but we didn't understand why it was fun. That's what this minigame reminds me of. And I would love for someone who likes this minigame to explain to me why they like it, because I think of all the things they could have had us doing, holding left or right 3 times in a row until something turns green is pretty much about the most mindless, pointless, and needless thing they could have done. But you move this icon around the map, and then you move these bars left and right till they go green, and it scans a point, and you have to do this until you find the correct point. And all I can think of right now is mining in Mass Effect, and how much so many people hated it. And I didn't mind the mining too much. It wasn't great, but I didn't mind it. But for a Gears of War, I'd kind of wish that Jack would do this, and that I could just kind of not be a part of it. Because it's just so weird. And once again, it's an opportunity for diverse gameplay. It's something a little bit different, but sometimes different is not always good. And sometimes just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that's it's just so strange. And when I did it on stream, we were all completely vexed. we were confused, because it's just like, why does this exist? It's so weird. There's a lot of side quests in this area as well, so feel free to check those out if you want to do them. I'm going to be carrying this mulcher for a long time, guys, but I'm never going to actually use it because it's going to get taken off me. So my advice, use the mulcher on the fight when I'm going to tell you to use it, because if you don't, you're going to lose it. And the game was really good at letting me inherit these heavy weapons up until that point, which is really unfortunate because I love carrying a big gun into a fight and giving myself a nice advantage. But there's more components for Jack. We're going to be moving out of this door and back into the snow. And you're going to be able to see a lot of the pacing here. You know, we haven't had a fight since that one with the shotgunner guys. And we've moved through a few areas. And I've been trimming out some sequences. And it's really noticeable, you know? Why isn't there a unique snowy enemy that turns up in this segment to give this segment something that stands it out from the other sections? Like, this would have been perfect for us to come up against some wildlife. Some Seren wildlife that's nowhere else in the game. Make it a feature, make it something interesting. We've never really been to snowy places in Gears. Give us something snowy to interact with, you know? It's fascinating, it's unusual, and I just feel like it screams of missed opportunities. Maybe it's all in the submissions, in the side missions, and you fight something there. But there's the slide back down. This is going to lead us to the skiff, and then from... Oh, look at Delgo. And then from the skiff, we're going to move forward onto the next sequence, which is moving towards the next of those communication towers. But when you compare this to the pacing of that first act, where it was just boom, 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 new scenario, new scenario, new scenario, talking to some characters, shit's kicking off, new scenario, new scenario. The first act had so much Gears in it, I was really happy. And then this act turned up, and I was really bored. It's just not what I thought I'd be doing, you know? But it's not bad. As much as I don't like it, it's not bad. And as soon as those launch day patches hit the game and fix some of the stuff up, so that a lot of the problems are hopefully going to be a thing of the past, and all the people who play then won't even realise the game had problems, which would be awesome. Once that happens, like, look at that, that's a fucking pain in the ass. It drops the gun that was in the stowed position underneath directly where it was stowed, so if you try to pick it up, you're going to interact with the gun that's already there. Like, I don't know why it doesn't cast it a bit further forward. Is that too unrealistic in a game about people shooting anthropomorphized monsters with future guns to save a planet that's not Earth, that has a 26-hour day? Like, I don't know. On this section here, though, if you go on the right, guys, there's a side mission. I go to the right because there's a boom shot over here, so if anybody needs a power weapon to give to Del or to keep for themselves, there's a nice little tucked away boom shot on the right of this hut, and I want to show it off, even though I'm not going to grab it. Do you see how there's a... Do you see that icon just then? So do you see that? It's a boom shot relic. It is a unique boom shot. You want to give that to Del if you can. I'm not that bothered, though, because I know that Del with that stick is going to do what I need him to do, and everything else I can cover. But it's really, really good to know it's there. And did you see how it had the cog symbol? In the very first Gears of War, the cog symbol symbolised a collectible was near, a cog tag. In this game, it symbolises that you're close to a relic weapon. Those were those micro stutters that happen in this game. I'm really hoping that they can release new drivers to help that go away, because the hardware I'm running this game on runs this game fantastically. Like, when I'm not capturing it, it runs so much better, and there's no reason for something like that, because it's stuttering at times that do not max my CPU or my GPU or my RAM or anything. There's no reason for it at all. It's obviously all the porn torrents. Too many porn torrents that are just ruining my experience, and I apologise profusely, but I'm just a pervert, you know? But keep moving through the forest, guys. I'm really looking forward to testing the crossplay on this game for things like Horde, because I've played some on Gears 4, and it seemed pretty good.
There was a lot she didn't tell me.
Like, I really hope that this game can do well for the Coalition, and I really hope that the progression is not as cancerous as it was in the last one. I really hope that Horde is interesting and doesn't get plagued by so many quitters. Like, I'm really hoping big things for Gears 5. And I'm trying my best also, because when Gears 4 came out, I thought it was a good game, but I didn't really like it, so I didn't play it. I just I did my walkthrough. I tested out all the stuff. My friends weren't interested. By the way, guys, this is the fight that you should use the mulcher on, because you're going to lose it. But I'm going to show you a new mechanic here. This is one of my favourite mechanics in the game. This is one of the saving graces of this act. Whenever you fight on ice, if you shoot the ice, it breaks and it kills enemies for you. It also kills you. And the weather is apparently so cold that it refreezes the ice. So this is a mechanic that you can keep going back to repeatedly to save you some ammo and some time. And it just adds a new dimension of tactics and strategy to the fights. I really like the way the ice works. I just wish there was more fighting on it, you know? But we're fighting now, so I'm happy. We've got a guy rushing. If I get too out of place, I can either blind him with Jack or I can use Stim.
Let's go.
I was never in any danger there, guys, unless he punches me. Because I had him flinching from my gun. I had the angle on him, and he didn't have a shotgun. But there's a sniper at the back of this who can be a bit dangerous, so watch out for him. There's also a hammer burst here. The hammer burst in this game is quite interesting. It fires pretty quick for a hammer burst. You can't look into its iron sights anymore, which is unfortunate, but it's kind of a different weapon. You're going to notice that when you use it. The iron sight was cool, but the single shot was also cool as well. You know, this weapon has seen a lot of different versions. In the first Gears, I never really liked the gun too much. It always felt like it took a little bit too much damage and it didn't shoot fast enough to get the job done. Oh, here we go, we got a couple of the Elite Grenadiers. I'm trying to break the ice to knock him in. One thing you'll notice, guys, it was the same with Gears 4. The throw arc on the blind fire on grenades in these newer Gears is not the same. I kind of miss the old throw arc from the first Gears, because in that game, I can put a grenade anywhere on the screen, because I know how to do it, I've done it so much. This game, I will usually miss my grenades, and it's not something I normally do. That was one of the things I was always really good at in Gears 1. I had a good understanding of where to put the nades. In this game, they bounce like crazy. They go some serious distance. Like, you can't throw grenades as far as you can in this game in the old ones. They just don't work that way. Like in Judgment, when they changed the throw and they changed the button, even then I don't think you can throw the grenades as far as you can in this one. You can get some crazy bounces in this, it's ridiculous. But one of the worst parts about the new Lancer is how much more accurate it is than this Lancer. It hurts this Lancer. And I'm curious if anybody else gets that same feeling. Once I got used to the GL, I found it really hard to come back to this one because this one has way too much spread. It's such an unusual thing that they've managed to do, but they have done it very well. They've cuckolded the classic Lancer by using just a superior Lancer. And the only reason I can think that anybody would prefer the standard Lancer is because of the chainsaw. And in this game, I don't think chainsawing is half as essential as it used to be. It's really good against relics. It's really good against anybody that gets close. But I've never really needed to do it. And it's led to not carrying that Lancer anymore and going with the GL, which is crazy. Because anybody who has played Gears campaigns a lot, you know that the Lancer is one of those guns where you will keep it for pretty much the entire game unless you're doing something super specific, or unless you know how to carry double power weapons through the full campaign. And a lot of the times, the games are obsessed with taking the weapons off you, so you can't even do that. Speaking of, this is the bittersweet misery of losing my mulcher. So I'm going to try and cheat this like a beast. So I noticed that the mulcher's there, but it's having problems. And I think, I can use Jack to pick this up. So I purchase an upgrade on Jack to pick up a heavy gun, because you can only do it once he's upgraded. And then, when I do this, the weapon glitches towards me. So if you notice, I try to get Jack to pick it up. And then boom, see that? And then it floats. So I've got the magic and mysterious floating mulcher. But then Jack doesn't know how to grab it because Jack can't do that, apparently. And I mourned this Lancer, dude. I could play some Boys to Men right now if it wasn't for the fact that YouTube would shoot the video dead instantly. I'd love to. Because I was not happy. I spent this whole video carrying this fucking mulcher so that I could use it on a fun fight. And there were no good fights that came up that needed it. And then I lost it. And the fight that's about to come up is hard. This is the first difficult fight of the chapter, in my opinion. I died a bunch of times here when I first did it on my stream. And now I've got a good strategy because I realise that you can use the ice to break it, and I'm also really confident around the leeches now because I understand how they work. And I managed to do this on one attempt. But this was definitely one of those... And it's a shit checkpoint too, because the checkpoint is when you mantle up on that ledge, so you have to hack the safe again, you have to pick up the stuff again, you have to go through the doorway again, and you have to watch the cutscene again. Like... I haven't mentioned this because I don't want to project my neurosis too much to you. I've already done enough of that. But the checkpoints in this game are shit. And they're shit because they put them before you enter rooms. So you have to do needless bits of navigation to get back to where you died. And it's not the end of the world, but it's still enough to get you really frustrated. And if you're anything like me, where the checkpoint should be there. The start of the fucking fight. The part that makes sense. But instead it's not. And we've had so many Gears games that there's no excuse now. And that relic is just a genius. He did not want anything to do with my shenanigans. But the strategy here is very simple. Stay in cover or you're going to get melted by the tri-shot. And then use the grenades to deal with these guys. If the relics get too close and try to grab you, use stim, run away, and then get back in cover. Use as much of the ice lake as you can to break the ice, to take out these guys. By shooting the ice with various weapons. And if they get too close, I put my Boltok on, and then I headshot them with a Boltok and I run away again. There's a little bit of luck involved in this. If the tri-shot decides to target you when you're out of cover, if you're out of cover too long, he'll just melt you. But if you use it intelligently and try to keep the full body of this rock in your profile so he can't get a direct line to you, you should be fine. And then the leeches are here, so try and pay attention to the leeches. And then move if they get too close. If they don't, use your stim or kick them away, whatever you're comfortable in doing. And then there's a bastion. So this is a sentinel. The sentinels have taken the biggest transformation in this game. They've gone from being one of the most dangerous and annoying dickheads in the entire game to being one of the most annoying and dangerous dickheads in the game. But their danger now is purely defensive. Here come the leeches. But you see what I mean? Your team does such a good job, and the ones that do hit you, if anything else is near you, just hit the stim. Like, boom. And I shot him anyway. So you're never in danger if you know how to stim. So what he does is, the Bastion does not attack. It is purely a support character. It will fly near an enemy, giving them an impenetrable shield. And it's a pain in the ass. It's so devious and genius and perfect. Like, previously, Guardians, I didn't like them too much because they had the ability to hit you with bullshit missiles while you were in cover. They had the ability to just splash damage you with ridiculous AI dog shit, and it always made me mad. In this game, they are perfectly fair, and they are still incredibly dangerous. But they're not dangerous in the same way. They're dangerous because they empower another enemy to be indomitable, and you do not want that. So, they are the first thing you want to kill. And this is where it gets even sweeter. So the Guardians in the old game didn't really have a weak spot. They were just arseholes that took a beating and kept running away and recharging a barrier. In this game, they have a red lens at the front of their face where their eye is. If you shoot that lens, you will do 75% of their HP with like a sniper rifle. It is such a cool thing. And the drawback is, it's really tricky to shoot it. So it's not the easiest shot, it's a very small amount of space, but it rewards you massively. And I think what they've done to the Bastions, to the Sentinels, the Guardians, is the best piece of iterative design they could have done. Because they've changed it massively, but it's still really threatening, and threatening in a way that complements the game. Like, if he was still a Guardian that could do Guardian things, and he could still barrier people, he would be the most dangerous thing in the bloody game. Because the Guardians, if you ever played Inconceivable Horde, if they have a tri-shot, you're dead in like 2 frames. They kill you so quick. Once again, we've got a Warden here, guys, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to carry the tri-shot with me. He's going to run at me, I'm going to blind him with Jack, then I'm going to kill him. If Jack does not blind him, you're in trouble, and you need to panic, because he's going to one-hit you. And maybe Stim won't work, because sometimes Jack decides not to help. And once again, I don't know why Jack does that, he's just a bit of a troll. But there goes the Warden. The Warden is a really cool enemy. he's just so easy to exploit. That's his big problem. But of all the new enemies, I think the Warden is the best. Because he's dangerous, but he's fair. But keep on moving forward, ladies and gentlemen. We're moving ever so swiftly closer now to the communication area. There's a little bit of a reject fight coming up. If you have a chainsaw here, this is a really easy encounter, but unfortunately, I don't. So I'm going to stealth kill a few of these guys, and then I'm going to kill the rest of them with the Boltok. But once again, this is an environment that has the right amount of space for this type of fight, so you can do this whole place by kiting. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. You can actually skip it as well. You can lure the rejects away from the safe, you can get Jack to hack the safe, and then you can just sod it off. But there are 3 guys who are going to stand up here, and then I think there might be a couple more spawns. So I put my Boltok on, and then I start the fight. So 3 guys across from me who are now going to start attacking. See that though? One-shot headshot with the Boltok to take the head off, and then they're going to detonate. That one took 2. Maybe I wasn't spot on him. The Boltok's damage is hit and miss sometimes. But just keep running away from them, pop around, put some shots on them. You can even run towards them and stim, and they won't be able to get you. But this is something that's really important. I imagine you're going to have to learn to do this for Horde. Because in Horde mode, the rejects are just going to be a nightmare, I can already tell. They're running around while something else really dangerous is around. It's going to be a recipe for disaster for a lot of teams. But pick up the refresh for the Lancer GL. You'll notice it gave me 3 grenades for it. I used my 3 grenades against the Stump, I believe, or against the... I might have even used them against the Warden, but I can get a replenishment, so it wasn't wasted. It was used well, and now we can go inside here. And then inside here we can repeat what we did in the previous one, the mini-game that does not deserve to exist, because I can't really think of a good reason why it does. The best mini-game. We have another upgrade for Jack, so keep those eyes peeled. And we have a checkpoint, which is rather generous considering we've not really done anything and we don't need one. But you know what would be really good here, guys? If when we touched the machine, the coordinates were already on the machine, so we didn't have to do the minigame again, and we got attacked by something, because it would subvert the expectations of having to fuck around with this computer again. We did that last time, we questioned why it existed, and this time, can you imagine if like a pouncer fell out of the roof or something? Something a little different? It could be anything, right? It could be some leeches that are left over that have converted the DBs. But no, it doesn't happen. Instead, awesome, super sexy, holding left or right simulator 2019. And I was tempted to speed this up or remove it, because you don't really need any advice on doing this, but it gave me an opportunity to remember just how much I feel like this mechanic is completely misplaced and shouldn't be in the game. Because in previous Gears, do you know why in Gears War, guys? That's an interesting title, isn't it? Gears War, best game. No, in Gears of War, the first one, the reason that you turned those machines, those wheels, was because it was probably masking loading. That's probably what it was doing. It was handling the resource pipeline to guarantee that whatever was coming next was going to be streamed into the game quickly and in the best way that they could. And the only way to do that was to get you to synchronize the game in some way. And the best way was by turning those valves. It was tedious. It was something that I made several jokes about because it's just quintessential Gears. Turning massive wheels for weird reasons is funny and strange, right? It's just the way it is, and when we get Cloak, which is very powerful. And here's the Cloak tutorial. In this game, there's been so many progressions from generation and technology and from hardware and from power. We don't really need to mask loading in the same way anymore. Lots of games mask loading while cutscenes are happening, while narrative is happening. There are a lot of ways to do it that are a little bit more ergonomic than having the character stand and turn a fucking wheel. So I just don't really see that as an opportunity to mask loading. I see that as an idea that the devs thought was going to be quite different to what you've been doing to space up the encounters. And it stands as just like a really super vexing, weird conundrum to me. But there was a couple snipers introducing you to how powerful the Cloak is. Use the Cloak, guys. Upgrade the Cloak. Use the Cloak. It's ridiculous. You can execute people from the front. From the front. I just can't even begin to tell you how strong this move is. This move is so strong, I'm not going to use it outside of 2 instances, because it kind of turns off the need to play the game. It's very powerful. A couple of awesome stutters there.
Hey, if you're worried,
Keep moving forward. But it's really good, and if you want an easier time, I definitely recommend you use it. Upgrade it, use it. It's in the game to be used. Don't feel bad about it. It's super effective. I don't think you can execute big dudes though. So big dudes, you're gonna have to get really close to them and then torque bow them from 1 yard, which I've incidentally never done, but that sounds really fun. Look at the bluish hue here and the bloom off the snow with the light filtering through. It just looks so dreamlike, doesn't it? It looks very beautiful.
pre or post.
It'll look less beautiful after it's compressed, but this is a really good looking game.
With a beach.
And it performs really well too. You don't have to have a monster PC to play this game. Obviously, if you're wanting to get ultra settings and higher frame rates, it'll take a bit more. But if you're happy with 60, and you cap everything to 60, you will have a very beautiful looking game. The dynamic resolution won't lower as much as mine does when it's trying to hit higher frames. Like, it's really something else. And if you're one of those people, for instance, if you want this game to run at 140 frames, and try and keep a constant 140 to match your refresh rate of your monitor, then if you turn a few things down, you can still have the game looking really good, and you can keep that frames always in the triple digits, because it's very well optimized. It's just at this moment in time, it has a couple problems that are not necessarily to do with your hardware, that are affecting the game in a lot of ways.
Worth a try.
But here is the sequence that we got the coordinates from by doing that funny minigame. And what it's done is, it's given us a location of a mine where we now need to go so that we can get some explosives to break the ice. And to get here, you have to come up onto this ice ridge, and you have to sail across this side bit. This is easy to get lost here, guys, and I was tempted to keep in the footage of me, driving the full way, but I wanted to show you that all you have to do is go up that little arch, that like dynamic natural cliffside, and it'll lead you here. And the piece of advice I will give you guys, you'll see yellow flags that tell you when you can generally get out in a position that's important, and Dell will speak when you get out to tell you you're going the right way. If you get out and Dell doesn't say anything and the HUD doesn't update, you're going the wrong way. But this is stutter territory, and we also have a wonderful moment where one of the textures refuses to load. So that's always fun. It's a sky texture too, and I don't know how much of it you're going to see, guys, but when I saw it, it was really funny because everything else had loaded really well, and then there's this one angry looking cloud that looks like it came out of Minecraft. It's so beautiful. If you love, ugly, unloaded, unreal assets. But move through the cliffs, move through the caves,
We're going down.
keep up the clip. Enjoy the discourse between Kate and Dell. But did you see it just then? Did you see it? Look, you see it? Look at it! Look at it! Look at that fucking cloud! Look how beautiful everything else is, and then look at that one cloud. That must have been a problem with the game at the moment, because it's not meant to do that. And the first time I played, it was not like that. But for some reason, I'm turning the camera away, hoping it updates the asset, and it never does. So I always get the low quality asset the whole time, and it's a bit of an eyesore for such a pretty game. But yeah, so shout out to the N64 version of Gears of War 5. It is populated by nothing but that cloud.
Whoa. So there is
But this is a really beautiful area. I love it that they've put those touches of red everywhere to make the colour pop out. Because one of the things that the old Gears games didn't really have too much was colour. Colour was one of those things that gradually seeped into the game, and by Gears of War 3 there was a lot more of it. But I think it lost the grit. It lost the aesthetic. Gears of War 1 is this crazy, sepia-toned, browny green, constantly moody, constantly evoking this like oppressed, just desperate damage of reality and a war you cannot win. And I thought it was perfect for the time, and it looked so dramatic and so beautiful. But when you go back to it, it does look like Captain Brown the game. It's like the brownest game in the world. Outside of Resistance. Resistance Fall of Man has the world record for most use of brown. And then we have this, which is a really cool fight, and a tricky one coming up. So right now, there's a Scion with a drop shot and I'm getting rushed by a shotgunner. Right now is when you need to worry. Because when he's this close and you don't have stim on, because I've had to use the fucking stupid map the location for the game, I got caught with my pants down then and I'm immediately going to swap it back. I should never be walking around with the tools I had on, but the game forces you to use them. And one criticism that I have, guys, is when you have to shock trap something, I think you should just be able to look at it and press E. You shouldn't have to swap your fucking abilities and then do the ability and then have to have a cooldown after a mandatory ability use. It just doesn't seem fair to the player. And of course, if you can, headshot the Scion because he'll die instantly. Oof! Never not fun. Good night, Imago. But because this is all on ice, whatever you shoot the ice with is going to break it, and it's going to help you kill a lot of really dangerous stuff coming up. And I become the victim of checkpoints on this next sequence, so what I'm going to do here, guys, is do not touch any of the weapons that the game has put on the ground. And I don't mean the ones that the enemies have dropped, I mean the ones that it's placed. There's a drop shot on the right there, there's a drop shot on the left, and there's a buzzsaw on some crates. Do not pick them up unless you are confident you can do the next checkpoint on one attempt. Here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to show you the filthiest, most dangerous and powerful setup for this next segment. You're going to have a fully stocked drop shot, a buzz shot, a fully stocked lancer. You're going to have a torque bow and max grenades in a position of safety where the juvies struggle to get to you because their AI pathing's not that good, and it's the best place pretty much I've found to be. However, if you die, you're going to lose access to everything I just mentioned. You'll lose the buzz shot, you'll lose the drop shot, you'll lose the ammo, you'll lose it all. Because the game saves the state that you entered the checkpoint, but it despawns all the shit on the ground. And I become a victim of it, and thus I'm not going to be able to use it, but I'm still going to show you what I did to set it up. Because if you can do this in one checkpoint, and it's very possible, you'll be fine. However, if the juvies get to you, and there's a lot of people looking at you, you need to be careful. Because I ended up getting double swiped by a juvie when I was running away from, I think, a drop shot or something. And it happens. But the buzz kill is really important. This weapon will break the ice in one hit. So using this to shoot the ice next to an enemy is far more effective than shooting at an enemy, because the reticle on this gun is rather ambitious and hard to tell the distance with unless you're a master of it. And it's just easier to do that. But here is the setup anyhow, guys. I'm going to carry this all the way over to this area on the left that's elevated and can only be accessed from one point, which is they have to climb up onto the dock area and they have to come around. There's a drop shot here that I'm going to go and get the other drop shot from. There's ammo to my right, there's grenades there, there's this buzz kill. We have 2 buzz kills for this next fight. 2 buzz kills, that's enough to do the fight. And I still managed to balls it up, but, you know. Bear with me, folks, I'm only human. So 2 buzz kills, a fully stocked drop shot. It doesn't get much sexier than that, but I still died. So there are 3 drop shots as well, because that's the drop shot that the Scion had.
I'm taking this.
Crazy. And Dell is not the best companion for this fight. When I first did this fight on stream, I got my ass kicked, and I kind of felt like you should have had more companions with you. This feels like a segment where you should have 4 cogs. But just you and Dell, it feels a little bit like you're outnumbered and you're overwhelmed, but because it's on the ice, that's what the developers are going for. The whole point of this fight is to use this mechanic against them, and it works wonderfully. But here's me stocking up. You're going to see a transition in a moment, where there's a crossfade and I have to run all the way back here. But I picked up the Retro Lancer so that I could have all those big weapons next to me when the fight started. And there's no reason to leave that corner. I'm super stacked. I'm set up as best as I can be. And if you have the confidence, go for it. If you don't, though, don't. Because it's going to take away some really important tools. And I'd like to tell you that this fight is easy, but it's not. I think that this is one of the best fights in the game because it's challenging, but it's really fair too. So, do you notice how everything's gone away? That's the moment when Chris noticed he'd fucked up. But at the beginning, there's going to be a wave of juvies. Just hit the juvies with your shots. Try and be as accurate as possible. They're all going to run towards the side of the docks where we are, and they're going to try and come around. And you'll notice that they get stuck a lot because they can't path to us as they normally would. It leads to a little bit of RNG though, because sometimes the juvies get to you and sometimes they don't, and additionally sometimes Jack will defend you really well and then sometimes he won't. But the first spawn after the Imagos and the drones show up, there's going to be a Scion that comes with a Bastion, and you need to sink him immediately. I'm going to use the Torque Bow to sink both of the shotgunners. Did you see the range on that ice break then? How nuts was that? Gosh, it's such a cool mechanic. I love this fight. But do not kill the Imagos on the left-hand side. You want those guys to stay there. They, for some reason, don't like to move. I don't know if it's a bug. I don't know if they're just intended to be show, you know, like display locusts to get free headshots on. But once you kill this Scion, this Bastion is going to need another person to protect. So he's going to go for them. If he goes for a shotgunner, the shotgunner's going to rush you with a shield and you're going to have a bad time. If he goes for one of those Imagos, they're not going to rush you and they're just going to sit over there and you're going to have all the time in the world to defend yourself. It seems like Dell's using the Hammer Burst instead of the Breaker Mace, which is kind of unfortunate. But use your positioning here, get rid of the drones. Ammo is a bit of a problem for your assault rifle because it fires so very quickly. But you have the Boltok, and the Boltok is really strong. There's also ammo in the middle compartment that you can go for. There's a couple boxes over there. That guy's crawling. When he dies, the next Scions are going to turn up, and there's 2 of them. So what you want to do now, folks, there's going to be more Juvies coming, so try to hit the Juvies if you can. These are the guys that are going to cause the biggest issue because you have to prioritise the big guys, but the Juvies sneak up on you. And also the shotgunners. There's 2 of the Scions, and there's another 2 shotgunners. If you can deal with the Juvies quickly, and you can get rid of both of these Scions, then the shotgunners are the only threat at that point. And if you shoot one Torque Bow like I did before, you'll get rid of both of them. The problem here is sometimes you can't shoot because of the cover, and if you shoot the cover, you'll kill yourself. That was perfect. Absolutely perfect. And now I just need to take him out. That was also perfect. Right now, there are 3 Imagos left, and there are 2 of the Bastions with them, and when we kill them, we win. And that's the end of the fight. I don't have the best ammo right now, and I don't really want to be using all my Torque Bows and everything, but I'm going to fire another one to try and get some splash to kill them both. Didn't quite work. What I should have done is swapped my Lancer for his Hammer Burst, or gone for the ammo. That would have been the best thing to do, and it looks like I'm going to go for the ammo. But I made that look really simple, and it can be that simple if you keep on top of it. However, if you do not break the ice and get rid of the threats, it's really easy to die here. But that's kind of the best fight. If you can keep the advantage in your favour, you win. If you lose that advantage, you lose. It's the tug of war of the tactical battles of Gears, and this is easily one of the strongest fights in the game, and it's easily one of the hardest. But luckily, the lake is the equalizer. If you use the lake correctly, you have no excuse not to really, really, you know, have a strong chance of winning. But you can't go up that piece of cover because it's too tall, unfortunately. There is no climbing over higher cover in this game yet. We're going to have to wait another 10 years for them to discover the idea of doing a body up. Which I find kind of interesting, because in the multiplayer for Gears 4, there were certain pieces of cover where you could mantle over them and fall a decent distance, and I was hoping that there was going to be more of an emphasis on things like that to give it more verticality. I wonder if we'll ever get there where you can kind of do like a scramble into a ledge grab or something. Because I can understand it in the multiplayer from the perspective of there are certain points where they want flanking to be strong and they don't want people just to be able to circumnavigate by jumping up the front of something instead of going around. It's kind of how Gears has always worked. It's about controlling positions and locations. You lose that when everybody can access everything. That was one of... Ooh, the cloud's back. Do you see it? The terrible cloud. The cloud of doom. But one of the things that Call of Duty learned, and I think it was a pretty big lesson for them, was when they moved to Advanced Warfare and there was all the jumping and the dodging, the maps didn't play the same. The traffic routes and the power positions weren't as strong because people could move through the map in unconventional manners. And the best players were the people that circumnavigated areas that would normally be kind of like a kill box or a kill zone, and they just went in unorthodox positions and won the fight that way. And it made that game have a greater skill ceiling in positioning, and it's one of the things that makes movement in games so important, when movement is skillful and something you can actually have great agency over. But there's a safe over here for Jack to electrocute. If you're playing as Jack, you don't have to press E on those, you have to literally electrocute them by holding the trigger. One of the strange things about playing as Jack in Gears 5 is you can't control his elevation, or it seems like you can't, so instead of being able to go up and down and like fly above people and not be in danger, you're at the mercy of the game auto-adjusting your height, and it feels awful. I'm looking forward to playing more Jack and hopefully finding some virtues in the horrible garbled mess of sins that he is at the moment, because everybody says that he's super useful in Horde, and I played him in the campaign on Act 1, and it was some of the most boring things I've ever done. It was certainly something else. Luckily my friends were there, so we got to have a nice laugh at it, but it was just weird. And speaking of weird, this section here is another one of those. This is a foreshadowing for an area we'll be moving back through in one of the worst gunfights in this game. And you won't hear me say that much because there's only a few fights in this game that I really don't like, because I feel like that they don't really adhere to the Gears standard. This one is just straight up Grand Theft Auto, shitty mission, why does it exist? Nobody wants to do this territory of bad. Whereas the other ones are just, they give the Swarm an incredible advantage and you have a really shitty position. Other than that, like, most of the fights in this game are really fun and really cool. And speaking of fights, we're coming up on a boss fight against a Snatcher. A lot of people have been having trouble with this one. I've seen some messages on some forums of people having real issue. I did this on my stream, on my first attempt, I think, first or second attempt, and I didn't really have too much of difficulty, but when I came back to record this, I died a bunch of times, and I can understand why people are having problems. So, a couple of things that I learned. The first one is that the quill that the Snatcher does, it seems to be telegraphed a little bit later than it used to be, and there are times when it can catch you off guard, and I don't remember that from Gears 4 the same. Maybe it's a bit more elegant, but the Snatcher has two moves, really. It has the quill that kills you instantly, it has the breath move that kills you instantly, and if you're close enough it can do a stomp, but I don't really count that, because if you're close enough to get stomped, you're probably going to get breathed on and die anyway. The real difficulty here is not being out in the open when the boss fires the quill, and additionally, not getting killed by the juvies. So just then, I used the stim, because I do not trust the hit detection on the Snatcher's moves to get out of there, and the stim is so good in this fight. And all I'm going to do here, guys, is that I'm going to shoot this boss a bunch with my explosives. These rockets do so much damage. If you can hit her with all of those, it's amazing. And then there's going to be a whole host of juvie spawns, because whenever the boss bangs the ground, it busts the pods and more juvies come out. So you just want to back up, try working on finishing the boss off, and then just be careful not to get overwhelmed by juvies like right now. So that juvie punches me, I'm one punch away from death, I do not have stim, and then the boss tries to do quill, so I need to get in cover, and then I get to kill it. And I did make that look pretty easy, but I understand why people are having a tough time here, because I got killed about 6 or 7 times when I was recording it, because the positioning didn't line up very well. I didn't notice the boss was doing that move, or the juvies managed to overwhelm me. There's a lot of factors there where that fight can escalate really quickly, and there's a checkpoint after it, and then we have to do one of my least favourite fights in the game.
Let's take what's left.
So this next part coming up is buggy, broken, badly designed, and should not be in a Gears of War in my opinion. If the game wasn't so broken, this might be better, but fundamentally the reason I don't like this section coming up is because you have to protect Jack, and Jack can die. The enemies will focus on Jack. Jack does not use cover. Jack does not even try to fucking hide. Jack just stands there while a bunch of perfect AI shoot and dump on him the whole time, and you are blamed if he dies, because you have to be aggressive. If you're not aggressive and stopping them, Jack just gets completely demolished. And it leads to a very tentative and frustrating escort mission, and there are almost no escort missions in Gears of War for a really good fucking reason, because escort missions are cancer and no one likes them. Nobody likes escort missions, they're never fun. The only good escort missions are ones where the person you're escorting has no chance or opportunity to fail. This is not that. And then to make it even worse, the juvies do not have their behaviours turned on sometimes, so they'll literally stand there and do nothing. The side of this ramp I'm going to be using to aim at these people through this doorway completely disappears sometimes, and you fall through it and it's all goofy and weird. And the whole section just screams unpolished, unbalanced garbage, and I have no idea, but this is by far the weakest engagement in the game. And the irony here is it's not hard. This is not a long fight, there's not a lot of enemies, there's not a difficult assortment of enemies, it's just the fact that you are protecting an AI that can literally fly in front of you and get himself killed. And it makes no fucking sense. I don't get this part. But you notice, the juvies just stand around. They don't even rush you. They don't come in this room. It's like they can't come in the room. And it makes no sense. And you'll notice you're going to see me fall through this bridge in a moment because the left-hand side of it is just goofy. But I'm just, like, they're everywhere. They're, like, in the geometry and on levels that they shouldn't be on and places where they shouldn't be. Like look at it. What is it doing? It's like their AI doesn't work. And you might be thinking, oh, this is just a one-off, Chris. It works not. No, this is not how it's meant to work. And it happens every time. I've done this section 6 or 7 times to test because I wasn't happy with the footage. And it always works like this. It's like this part's just broken. And I don't get it. But the idea is simple. Tentatively move forward, clearing out the locust, and then hopefully Jack doesn't rush forward and get killed. If you can do that, it's not too bad at all. It's quite a simple segment. But my first attempt at this on stream, Jack flew straight forward, got down to like 10% HP, and I had to chase him down, and I think I ended up dying trying to get to him. But it's a mess. Like, look at him. He's just like fucked off. Why? Why does he fly into the middle so everyone can shoot him, instead of standing behind the box or something? And you'd think, wouldn't you, maybe you can command him, maybe you can tell him where to go, maybe you can make him do something other than stand there and get gangbanged, but that's all he does. You have no agency in this, it seems like, and if you do, I never figured out how. And I don't get it. It's not good. So yeah, one of the worst parts of the game right here. But I do have a torque bow, and with a torque bow you can make almost anything bearable. But if you die at this point, you go back to the very beginning of it. It's not that long, there's not that much to do. It's just the whole time you're doing it, it feels really stressful and frustrating because it just doesn't feel like the game is functioning correctly. If all the juvies rushed you at the start, and the enemies rushed you at the start, you could stay in that first room and take them out really comfortably, but they don't. And there's a sequence coming up where you would think you would get attacked by more enemies, and nothing happens. I'd love to talk to a designer about this particular room to see what is meant to happen, if it's just buggy, or if it's just been designed by someone who doesn't understand what makes Gears of War very fun. But did you see that, dude? One of those guys took a talk. How the hell does a normal fucking locust take a talk? You know? How in the flying fuck does the submachine gun beat the bar? These are the questions we ask ourselves. Big up Liquid Richard. But here come a couple more of the juvies. I've got enough bullets to deal with them. Someone is shooting me, so I need to be cognizant of them. Luckily, the enemies prioritise Jack, and that's one of the only advantages you have here when it comes to getting overwhelmed. But this moment is just... This is not Gears. The only section that's even close to this is at the end of Act 4 on Gears of War. On Act 4 Gears of War, there's a segment where the game forces you to rush through 2 courtyards full of boomers and bad people, and the whole part is frustrating because there's a ticking clock. But even in that segment, you're not escorting someone, you know? You don't have this random thing that stood around getting gangbanged. In that moment, the big fear is getting aimbotted by the boomers, because it happens a lot. And in the remastered, I think they give you a checkpoint on that segment, which is really funny. Because in the original, they don't. But I'm very, very tentative here, guys, because I really dislike this segment. The one I ended up keeping was my first attempt as well, because all the other attempts I tried, it was the same result. So I didn't see the point in polishing the turd to pick the one that looks the best when the first one I did was perfectly acceptable and fine. There's one guy about to attack me here. It's an Imago, so he doesn't do too much damage, but he's still going to rush forward, so make sure you headshot him quickly. And then the final enemies is 2 guys at the end. They are 2 standard drones, and I'm going to hit them with a torque bow. And when I say hit them, I'm going to hit one of them and hope the splash kills them both. Which I believe it nearly did. I can't quite tell on my preview window. But it is kind of awkward that they don't give you that many resources after the Snatcher. And I did use a lot of my resources on the Snatcher. So this part has been made a little bit more difficult than it needs to be made, simply because I don't really have access to a nice replenishment. And it's nice that Dell's supporting me, isn't it? It's always kind to see. Dell's sat on that piece of cover the whole fucking time, refusing to help me. This is further exacerbating the problem with this sequence and the problem in general with the AI in this game, where it's just all over the place. But I don't mind too much because it meant that I was always in control. You know, I knew what they were going to do, and Dell wasn't there to stand in the way or annoy me on the cover and things, and I can live with that. I'd prefer it if you could play solo, as much as the game is a lot easier when you have a distraction. Because one of the things you don't realise in these games, guys, is when the Locust have no one else to shoot at, so they all shoot at you, you will see just how much damage they can do. Because they do incredible damage. It did kill both of them, that one torque bow. That was awesome. And there's no more enemies now, guys. There's going to be a checkpoint up here that leads to a segment where we have to move forward, kill some juvies, and then there's going to be a Scion. But that is, by far, my least favourite part of the game. Because it's just not fun, and it's not well designed, and it's currently in a state that I can only call broken. And I'm out of my torque bow, and there's a part of me that's thinking maybe I'll find one of those explosive ammo boxes to replenish it. I don't want to get rid of it because it's been so helpful. But I probably will in the end, because I'm pretty flippant like that. But as you push forward, you have to follow the train tracks, and then the juvies are going to come off that roof just in front of us. I wonder if our super texture's still knocking about. I believe if you climb up here, you have a place where the juvies can't even get to. I don't even know if the juvies can jump up here. It wouldn't surprise me if they couldn't. The game kind of screams as, you know, they've overlooked a lot in favour of this wider scale. But with the wider scale, there is a lack of focus on the game that's enabled a lot of these unpolished elements to creep through. Which is really surprising, because Gears of War 4, I'd love to go back in my brain to the moments when I had issues with that game, when it came to weird stuff happening. Because nothing stands out to me as problems on that perspective, because I feel like it was just a much better game at launch. But here is the Scion. If you have a torque bow, you can hit him in the face. I'm probably going to hit him with the rockets on the Lancer. Because at this moment, luckily, the Mulch is shooting at me, but if he were to shoot at Jack, this would be the end of the game. Look at the damage those rockets do. They're so good. Yeah, that Mulcher wants me. Look at that. Look what he just did. Did you see that? Jack almost literally moved in front of where the stream of bullets were. Ah, it's so frustrating. Why would they program him to do that? Obviously, programming is a very difficult thing, and it's not like it's the easiest thing in the world. That when we complain about it, we don't really know what goes into making it well, but I just feel like he should never do that. Then again, I don't know why this part exists. Why didn't Jack just get that core and then we just came out and we had normal fights, you know? Nobody wants to protect something you can't control. Like, if anything, it wouldn't have bothered me if I had to carry it. Make me carry it, make it so that I can only use my pistol. There was a sequence like that in the old games, wasn't there, when you were carrying that stupid box that later on became fabricator technology. So that right there, guys, was me pausing the game, checking my settings to see if anything was different, because I got like 3 stutters in a row just then, which you saw. And I checked my task manager, and nothing. The game is just, for some reason, every so often, it seems to be when it does the loading. Whenever the game interacts with the server, the game seems to chug with that stutter.
I hope so, but I don't know.
Because if you remember, we moved through this area before, and there's nothing in it. It's just a big, beautiful area, and we didn't get those then. It's super hit and miss. And I suppose I could turn off, you know, things like ambient occlusion and subsurface scattering and screen space reflections and things like that. I could drop the volumetrics to medium instead of high. There's a lot of things I could mess with, but I didn't ever get into a point where the frames affected my ability to play, because outside of a couple of handful of spots, they were always like give or take in around. When I wasn't recording, I was always getting over 100 frames. When I was recording, it would go down to 60 and 70, but mostly it hung around about 90 to 100, and I'm cool with that. Like, it never fluctuated crazily when I was aiming. I never felt like the game was hard to play. It always felt pretty great, which is definitely a compliment to its optimization. Because I think the stuttering has nothing to do with the game itself and its relationship with your hardware. But here we go. We now need to take the explosives we got from the mining facility to the part of the ice, and you have to ping it with the radar thing that Jack does, which I just think is really silly. And I've trimmed out a bunch of cutscenes to get us into the next section, which is going to be the final chapter of Act 2, which is called Dirtier Little Secrets. And it's a wonderful little throwback to an old chapter name, which I did appreciate. And once again, you'll notice we're going back into quintessential Act 3 spooky Gears of War sequence, only we've already done it a few times in this video, and all it seems to do in Gears 5 is affect the pacing, because the pacing in this game seems to be all over the place if you're used to the usual cadence of Gears. Like, I get the feeling that Big Benedict, who's another big Gears fan, who will be covering this game at some point, I think Bic's going to get pissed off by parts of this game, because there's so many moments where you spend time not playing Gears. But pop your cloak on here, guys. The cloak is going to help you get through the lasers. When you get into these rooms, you have to put the arc trap on, because interacting with these stupid things is imperative to opening the door into the next spooky section. And then if you run over here, this is where the cloak is going to come in handy. Because if you mess with these lasers, they'll just end you. Very dangerous. And I think there's some resources in this room, yeah. There's an opportunity for Jack to power himself up. So grab as many as you can. Very useful. And we're going to be moving into the next location where Niles is. And you're going to be taking on the Sires.
More than ready.
So the Sires in this game are very different. They prioritise a grab where they steal you, or they pretend to steal you, and then they just rip your head off, which makes no sense. Shooting them seems to take a decent amount of time. The shotgun is absolutely terrible. However, if you have a chainsaw and you've brought a lancer, hint hint, the thing I've been telling you to do since the beginning of this guide, bring a lancer with a chainsaw on your partner, just in case you don't have one. If you do that, I imagine one chainsaw will kill a Sire, and that will come really in handy. However, if you don't have it, you want to use the pipe. There's a melee weapon in this game called the pipe, and it kills Sires in 2 hits. And if you use the geometry correctly and make them mantle over cover and stuff, you can smack them when they can't smack you. And it leads to some pretty easy sections that can be quite difficult if you try to shoot them all. But this is another moment where there are a lot of moments here where you have to walk around slowly, listen to people talk, flick a switch, go through a zone with absolutely no fighting, and I was really tempted to trim a lot of this out, guys, because you just don't need help on these moments. Navigating in Gears, thanks to the TACCAM and the waypoint systems and the HUD, is almost always very simple. There's no real place to get stuck outside of those moments that happen to us all where we brain fart and the obvious thing we missed and we don't know how we missed it, but we did. Except for those moments, everything is pretty natural and pretty easy to decipher. It's the fights that you're going to struggle on. That's what I'm here for. I'm here hopefully to show you perhaps some alternate ways of approaching a situation. Most of my strategies in this game aren't really that because you don't need to do it. I think there's one strategy that goes against the grain of what a lot of people will use, and that's in Act 4, which is the end of the game. So you've done most of the game at that point. There is a particular boss in this chapter, which I think is the worst boss in the fucking series, and I think a lot of people are probably going to need the walkthrough for that boss just because of how bad it is. So I'm hoping for those people that I can be a solace that gets them through. And it's a video that's already on YouTube. You've probably already seen my particular strategy. I'll be able to give you context and explain what I'm doing a little bit better because I'll be commentating. But it is, of course, the Matriarch fight. And the Matriarch, for people who don't know, is a Berserker. And a Berserker is a very iconic Gears figure. This level is essentially Nostalgia the level, only the nostalgia is ruined because the Berserker in Gears of War 1 is one of the best designed bosses in the series. If you understand how she works, if you understand how she moves, you can make the Berserker look like a joke. You can embarrass her, and it's really fair, because she kills you in one hit. And when you're not getting killed in one hit, you want to be doing good damage and getting rid of her. And if you've ever watched my Gears of War walkthrough, my very first one for the... I covered the original game, but it was inspired by the Ultimate Edition. I show you some really good strategies for Berserkers, because I spent a long time fighting them. I have a lot of history with Berserkers. I once killed a Berserker on Insane with a snub. And you might be wondering, how the fuck did you do that? Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, I played against them so long, I learned their weaknesses and I learned what to do. And unfortunately, you can only hurt the Berserker after you've hit her with a hammer, because it makes her all nice and tender. And then you can shoot her with a snub and it works. And it takes a long time, but it can be done. However, the best thing to do to her is to grenade tag her. Grenade tagging is ridiculously damaging against the Berserker, because I don't think that the devs ever thought anybody would do it. That was the way I always fought her, and that's the way I'm going to fight her in this game. But the difference between the design philosophy of the Berserker in Gears 1 and the Berserker in Gears 5 couldn't be more different. In Gears 1, when she runs at you, you can sidestep her if you know what you're doing and if you move correctly. In this game, she changes her direction as she's running, and her hitbox is so huge, you can't. If you sidestep the Berserker in this game, you got lucky. Sidestepping the Berserker in Gears 1 was easy to do if you knew what you were doing. This game, completely different. When you get close to a Berserker in the first Gears, she does two things. She does a punch at the end of her run, and then she does a quick attack to recover just in case you're on another side of her, because she doesn't know where you are, even though she does, because it's a video game. In this game, when you get close, she can do an homage to that claw attack, but mostly, she'll just walk up and grab you, like she knows exactly where you fucking are, like you were shooting a Lancer, and the grab has such a huge range and vacuum, and it's so quick, it's just instant death.
Your little friend is quite handy.
Which is the complete opposite of what it used to be.
Well,
I can't even begin to tell you guys, like, the hitbox on this boss is so bad. It's so fucking bad. Like, you break the ice, the boss falls into the ice, and as you're attacking it when it's vulnerable, it jumps out of the ice back onto the platform. If it jumps where you are, and you're too close to shooting its weak point, it instantly kills you as it's jumping out the water. This is an animation it does repeatedly, that should never even interact with your character. But if you're in the wrong place, or if she lands on you, you're dead. So you have to know the exact distance to stand to be safe, or you can get killed when you're in a position of power. She's in a position of weakness, you're in a position of advantage, and she kills you instantly because they've given her a hitbox that's not honest to her body. And she does a ridiculous, like, super close jump to you for no reason. It just... all the elegance and all the grace of the Berserker is gone, and it's replaced with this shit-tier boss. And it gets worse, guys, because not only is the boss just an insult to how good she used to be, but there's all these things you can do to it, but none of them do good damage. Like, you can make it fall into the ice water and freeze itself and expose its back, and then you shoot it, and you do chip damage. You have to put, like, 50 clips of Retro Lancer in it to kill it, and it feels like shit. Every time you shoot it on its weak point, you put 2 full clips in it, probably inactive, and you do maybe 1/15 of its life bar, and it just feels underwhelming and shit. You point blank it with a Gnasher with actives, it does nothing. You hit it with explosives, it does nothing. You try to hit it with a pipe, it doesn't reach, for some reason. And my favourite part is, if you get too excited trying to attack it, you fall in the fucking water and die. It's just crazy. It's so crazy. And you're probably thinking, wow, this boss sounds very questionable. Or maybe you're thinking, you're completely wrong, I love this boss, how dare you. But to make things even worse, Kate starts hallucinating during the fight, and it actually affects the fight. It blinds you so that you can't see very well, because I think it's trying to give you an idea of what the Berserker sees, which is this, like, fog. It just can't see any definition until it's really, really close. And it's okay if it matters, but it doesn't. It's just showing you this connection, which is, you know, handily going to disappear after the fight. And it blinds you, so you can get blindsided by a Berserker, which is something that should never happen. The Berserker can jump while you're blinded and land on you and kill you instantly. And it can do it really quickly, and it can be very difficult to hear and notice that it's doing it. And I found a strategy against it, which I'll explain when we get there, but there's so many times when she blinds you when you're halfway through the fight, which has taken like 50 minutes too long. Oh, by the way, guys, I had a bit of a capture error here. You can still hear the game, but the screen froze for a couple seconds, and all I was doing is hitting people with a pipe, and then I was coming to pick up the Retro Lancer. That's all I did, guys. I was going to re-record that, but you didn't miss anything super important, so I do apologise. And this fight's actually really difficult, because you don't have the guns you came in with, because the game's taken them off us, and these enemies are classic Locust. They're like the intermediate from the Sire to the proper drone of the old school guys, and you're using a gun that's terrible at range to have sniper battles against enemies that kill you really quickly. So this section is quite difficult unless you play really aggressively. But I'm going to take it slow, and you'll be fine. But the Berserker blinds you, and then she can kill you when you're blinded, which is really frustrating. And then, even worse, she can kill your partner. I had about 4 attempts where she killed Dell. And it's just like, you know when you lose because your fucking teammates die? It feels so cheap. And I was on the boss for about 2 hours, guys. It's not like I had a really easy time with it and I killed it immediately. Like, when I was first fighting it, my first attempt, I tested old school Berserk tech, and none of it worked. And all it did was put me in a really bad mood. It put me in a really bad mood. Then how much HP she had put me in an even bigger mood. Like, I had to turn the voices off, I was getting so annoyed at it. And in the end, when I beat it because I found kind of like an homage to the old school tech, which is, if you freeze her, you can then stick her with a grenade, and if you back up a decent distance, you can freeze her again. And with the strategy I'm going to show you, she can't move. I'm going to completely stop her from being able to do anything, and I'm going to control the entire fight. And when you do it like that, there is an elegance to it. It's kind of interesting that I can have such complete control over this boss. But a lot of players aren't going to do it that way, and if you do it the other way, which is the way I did it at first, which is just like shooting the ice and letting her fall into it and then shooting her in the back, it's like a 15-minute fight, and it's boring, and that's the worst part. Like, if you watch my old Gears 4 walkthroughs, you'll hear that I don't like the Swarmak. I think the Swarmak is a shit-tier boss. And it's just because he fires missiles that you flip a coin, and if you don't get a 6, they kill you. That's all it is. And everybody that beats the Swarmak and says it's fucking easy never got hit by missiles. Everybody who has a tough time with the Swarmak got killed by RNG missiles. And they're really frustrating. And even if you put yourself in the safest place, there's still a chance it's going to hit you. So fundamentally, that boss to me is a shit boss because it's long, it's hard, and at any moment the boss can win if it wants to. And I don't like that mechanic, I never have. So I will always say the Swarmak in Gears 4 is a dog shit boss. I don't like it. Compared to this Berserker, I'd rather fight the Swarmak. Because as much as I don't like getting just one-tapped, the Swarmak isn't boring. The Swarmak is hard, and it's demanding, and you have to move, and you have to know where you're going, and know where the enemies are, and know where the juvies are, and know where your team is, know what's about to happen, and manage it correctly. For all the flaws of that boss, there's a lot of player agency that needs to happen for it to be effective, and for you to win. And I like that, as much as, you know, boss is dog shit. The fucking Berserker is just bad. It's boring, it's not fair, it's too long, and the biggest sin is that the Berserker was perfect in Gears 1. The first Berserker they made was what the Berserker should be. She was really dangerous if you played like an idiot, but if you played smart, it was almost like hide and seek. It was never meant to be a slugfest. It was meant to be you finally are on the back foot because something strong has turned up, and now you have to use your intelligence to beat her disadvantage, to beat her one weakness, which is the blindness. And it was always interesting and different because it wasn't like normal gameplay. Gears 3 changed it a lot and made it kinda Michael Bay, and I didn't think that the Lambent Berserker was anywhere near as good as the traditional one, but it still wasn't bad. It was just tanky and like when it ran around and laid all the lines of the lambency that hurt you, and you could just kind of die because you got pinned in and it ran at you and it killed you. That was frustrating, but it could be avoided with positioning. I feel like this boss, it's kind of superficial. On the surface, it looks great. It's a Berserker, it's a throwback to, you know, a classic monster from the pantheon of the series. It's that wonderful nostalgia moment, but it falls apart when you get close to it, because if you know anything about Berserkers, you'll know that it doesn't work like a Berserker. It's imitation at best, and it's absolute dog shit at worst. And I apologise if you really like the game and you don't want to hear somebody talk negative about it, but this is probably my least favourite boss in the series, and I hate the final boss in Gears of War 3. I don't really like a certain bunch of other bosses. Like, I don't think the final boss in Gears 2 is all that great. I think that Gears are always hit and miss when it comes to bosses. But I can understand what they were going for. Like in Gears 3, the only thing I don't like about that fight is the fact that the hammer doesn't have unlimited ammo. If the Hammer of Dawn in Gears 3 worked like it did in Gears of War 1, I'd have no problem with that fight. The fight is meant to be hard, it's meant to be intimidating, it's meant to be overwhelming, it's meant to be the penultimate zenith of the fucking series. It's meant to be crazy, and it is. But the difficulty stems there with, there is no checkpoint when you have to go and get a new hammer, and there's so much happening that you can die picking up a weapon, and no one wants to die picking up a weapon. It's just not fun. It doesn't feel fair, it doesn't feel challenging, you just feel like you get cheated. And this doesn't even have any of that. This is just like, I never had really much of a problem picking up a weapon. I just feel like the boss was really unimaginative. But here are the Sires, the wonderful throwback to an enemy that was promptly discarded after Gears 2. And I'm looking forward to seeing these guys in Horde mode, because I want to know how they alter the dynamic. But there's a lot of them here, and what I'm doing is I'm standing near these boxes because they have to climb over them, and as they're climbing you can get a nice cheap shot, so it completely neutralizes their advantage. That guy goes around the boxes because he's one of those smart Sires. We don't talk about those ones. He was quite smart as well, but this is by far the most effective manner of killing them outside of retro-charging or hitting them with the chainsaw. Because I tried the shotgun, and I put, 5 shotgun shells into a point-blank Sire, and I'm like, fuck this noise. The Gnasher will never be good in the campaign, ever, because it doesn't work. I shouldn't have to get an active, stick it in his mouth, and then fire 3 times. It's trash. Take the Gnasher from the multiplayer, put it in the goddamn campaign. If I'm even remotely close to 5 yards away from an enemy, and I hit them with the spread, they die. They die instantly. That's how it should be. And it wouldn't change the dynamic of the game that much. Because if you're that close, you're dying in one shot anyway, so it just makes it fair. But that's the first wave of the Sires. Make sure to replenish your pipe, and you can pick up a Retro Lancer if you want to, you don't have to though. The boss fight coming up, guys, all you need is grenades. You need to have 4 grenades, and that's it. Everything else you need is in the room. But if you can go into this fight with some nades, it's going to make it a lot easier. Because if you don't, you're going to have to do some shenanigans. And it all stems from the game took your weapons off you. If the game had not took your weapons off you, you would have had the Lancer GL's grenades to fire its rockets. You would have had the torque bow. You would have had so many good things. And hell, maybe the Berserker would have been more fun. I can't talk of it though, because you'll never get them. Because it's the game that takes them off you to make it harder than it needs to be. And this is another one of those spooky moments where they're playing on your expectations that sires are going to turn up, and then no sires turn up. So the next time you play, you're just bored. But there she was. There was the Berserker. Props to the development team. She looks amazing. I thought she looked fantastic. And when I saw her, I'm not going to lie, guys, I got excited. Because Berserkers are a special enemy in this franchise. They're an enemy that remind me of being young and playing far too much Gears of War campaign. And I'm always happy to see them. Because they're awesome. They're a cool enemy. I'm wondering in 6 months, once I've played a shit ton more of this game, if my opinions will change, if maybe I'll learn to see the grace of her design. Because, be under no illusion, guys, I didn't like the Berserker on Gears of War 1 when I first fought her, probably, because I probably thought she wasn't that fun, or it wasn't that interesting, or something like that. But it's something that you grow to appreciate the more you understand it. And I like to think I've always liked the Berserker, but there's a chance that I didn't. But in this game, after I fought her that one time, like, if I could show you a clip of my first encounter with her, it was perfect. Because she's in front of me, and she screams after I shoot her, and starts charging, and I sidestep to the left. I sidestep out of her way, and as she gets to me, I explode. And in that moment, I knew I was in for it. I just knew. Too much muscle memory. And the best part is, sometimes in this game, when you roll to dodge her run, she auto-corrects the run and still catches you. Like, it's really... If they wanted to make a Berserker a cunt, they did a great job. If they wanted to make a Berserker, they did a terrible job. But yeah, they definitely made it annoying. I'll give them that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what people think about this fight and what your experience was. If you had a really easy time with it, that's you did good. You did really good, because I was here, like I mentioned, I was here for 2 hours. There's nothing in this game that got me stuck as long as this, and it wasn't because the fucking thing was hard. It's because it just took so long to hurt her. And then when I found this strategy, this is way faster. So this is a 2-minute strategy. Run all the way over to the cryo cannon and pick it up. Then, stand on the left-hand side. You do not want to freeze her on the lake or she'll drop into it. Doesn't work. The moment she starts recoiling, you stop freezing, you put your grenades on, you run behind, you stick her back, you go pick up the gun again. If you're too close when you drop your gun, the grenade will kill you. And then the moment she defrosts, freeze her again. Watch for the flinch, drop the gun, run behind her, stick the grenade, run and pick the gun up again. This is all you do until you run out of grenades or you run out of ice. She now jumps away behind me, run the complete opposite side and put this wall in between you and her. If she decides to jump, she cannot jump through geometry. She has to have an open world to do it, and if you're next to this wall and she's coming that way, there's only one place she can be. So wait for her, freeze her, repeat. Stick it on the back. You can actually run through her too. The collision on is weird when she's frozen. Then she jumps away, run all the way around this corner. She can't throw any quills, she can't jump, she can't do any of the shenanigans that's going to get you instantly killed. If you back up, she has to walk, and because Jack's abilities aren't on cooldown, it'll tell me where she is because you'll see the emblem. Freeze her again. We're getting down to about 30 now in our last grenade, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to run away now, get the next cannon, because I'm going to bail on the other one. I didn't have to, but I'm confident that it works this way, so trust me, guys. Pick up this cannon. She's now going to move to us again. Move along the same wall so she doesn't stand in the water. And then freeze her. The reason you don't freeze her when she's on the lake is because when she recovers from the lake, she jumps away, and you can't chain loop her. You can't keep her frozen. So wait for to find where she is, freeze her, go pick up these grenades. There are a pair of grenades over here by a weapon. And then once you've done that, you want to go back and freeze her again. So, freeze her when she recovers, and then all we do now is we repeat. A couple of tips for people if you can't get this to work for whatever reason. When she throws the quill at you, if you move one direction as she's doing it, and then the moment she throws it, turn the other direction on a strafe, it will never hit you because it's predictive. It reads your inputs and it goes where you're going, not where you are. And if you can't find the timing to dodge it, wait for her to throw it. As soon as she does, use Stim. You'll absorb it and take no damage. But that is the hardest boss in the game, and I pray that you do not suffer like I did when I was trying to kill it with the Retro Lancer for like 15 fucking minutes and it was boring as sin. But that's the best strategy I could come up with. I doubt there's going to be a better strategy than that, but I look forward to seeing one if there is. Thank you for watching. I hope the guide is helping, and as always, you take care now.